Hey guys, this is the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for March 19, 2025. We're going to be looking at some of the NFL free agent signings that happened over the weekend, and then we're going to get into the NCAA Tournament, some futures that we're going to bet, and then also some strategies that you can deploy while watching the game. So before we get into all that and intro our co-host for tonight, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. As always, I am wearing one of my shirts. It is a dark blue Walter football shirt. It's part of our winter collection. Even though winter is about to end, you can still get it. You can get 15% off of anything in the merch store. Evan, this is the first time you're on here since we got some new mugs and stuff. So we have these. I decided to make like some quotes that NFL players have said. So like hindsight is 50-50. So you see someone flipping a coin. It's Cam Newton's quote. Also, you cannot change the stripes of a leopard. That is Emmett's quote. So here's a guy trying to change the stripes of a leopard with a paintbrush. I think that was pretty cool. So you can get all that at the WalterFootball.com merch store. Again, and the links in the description. Also, you can buy my books. There are 3 of them. The most recent one is Jerks of College Years, where I made fun of people I saw at Penn State for 6 years. It was a lot of fun to read, and I think if you guys like this sort of writing, I think you'll enjoy it. Also, please consider super chats and super stickers. It's the best way to support the show. We've had some great ones. John Sanders, Slew, Armac, Degeneron, Cam Macon Eagle, Alan Stafford. You guys have been so great with your contributions. I can't say that enough because these YouTube ads continue to suck. It's March, so we're almost out of Q1. So like the ad rates are a little bit better than they were in January, but it's still pretty bad. So that is the best way to help out the show. All right, we have the triumphant return here of Evan Daniel. Evan, we haven't spoken on here. Well, we've texted, but we haven't spoken on here in about a month. So how have you been?
Well, like I said before, I think I've forgotten everything about the NFL. Once the Super Bowl is over, I try to shut down the NFL for a little while, maybe until right before the draft. So if you quiz me on quarterbacks, I might not remember who's the quarterback of what team. I was just scrolling through your website and looking at all these new signings and like, oh wow, that's a lot of money for some of these guys that are a complete bust or a complete waste. And then, of course, like I said before, me as a Niner fan, I'm just excited about Kyle Juszczyk, one of the most important players in the league. And John Lynch, the greatest GM in football, cut half the team so he can overpay Brock Purdy. I'm excited about that. And I guess as you're scrolling through your list, I'm going to be surprised at some of these signings because I really have no idea. I have not really followed the NFL, but I'm looking forward to seeing what some of your grades are on some of these trade signings, etc.
I thought you were going to say John Lynch is a great GM because he cut half the team to re-sign Kyle Juszczyk.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you were going with it, but no, it's a good move to re-sign
Now
him.
he's trying to load up on DraftKings so he can draft a kicker or a punter in the third round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna just like I said, look at some of the grades from this weekend and plus Monday and Tuesday. Also, I'm gonna ask Evan about some of the contentious signings like Geno Smith and Cooper Kupp and whatnot. So we're gonna get into all that. So might as well dig into the signings. A lot of these are kind of minor, so I'll run through them quickly. Patriots signed Garrett Bradbury, 2 years, $12 million. I think this is a lot of money for Bradbury, who's only had one good year in Minnesota. That was in 2022. Otherwise, he's been pretty bad. He was a first-round pick, though, so there might be some potential here. And the Patriots cut their longtime center, David Andrews, so they needed a replacement. I assume that they're going to draft the center, and this is just for insurance because if they go into the season with Bradbury as their starting center, it's still going to be disastrous for them on the offensive line. And the Patriots haven't really addressed their offensive line at all, so I think they're going to go tackle at 4. If they don't, they're just going to get Drake May killed, even with Bradbury here. So not a fan of it, but I don't hate the signing. Lions signed Roy Lopez, 1 year, $3.5 million. He's a pretty pedestrian guy. He's an okay backup, I guess. But if you want him to start, it's generally not a good idea. But the Lions suffered a lot of injuries last year, so I can understand why they're going after depth here. Texans signed Ronald Darby, 1 year, $2.5 million. This guy used to be so good, but also injury prone too. Now he's old and injury prone. So this is a depth signing. Another thing I want to ask you about, Evan. I might as well do it now. Are you updated on like what happened to Houston's offensive line because they traded Laramie Tunsil to Washington. They traded
Outside of Tunsil, I have not seen anything that they've done on the line.
Okay, yeah. So they traded Tunsil and they cut Shaq Mason and they traded their other guard Kenyon Green. So they're down 3 offensive linemen, and they haven't really
Kenyon
done
Green was
anything.
injured a lot last season, no?
Yeah, and he's pretty bad. So like, okay, Kenyon Green, fine, but they lost Tunsil and Mason on a line that was already not very good. So if I'm CJ Stroud, I have to be pretty angry about this. I don't like where Houston's headed. I know they signed Christian Kirk. Not sure if you were surprised with that, but um, man, they're blocking next year unless they spend like every pick in the NFL draft on a lineman. It's going to be pretty brutal. So. Um, Still, they're in a bad division, so maybe they have a chance. What do you think?
Well, they definitely need to upgrade the line. I see right now their right tackle is a guy by the name of Blake Fisher, somebody that I've never heard of until this moment. He definitely does not look like an answer at tackle. And of course, on the other side, Titus Howard, who was there, I guess, on the right side, now moving over to the left. One of the things that I look for in the offseason is coaching changes and coaching moves. I think that plays a huge role. One of the things we talked about last year, and I thought one of the biggest signings of the free agent period was Vic Fangio to the Eagles, and really kind of revamped that defense. And usually it takes a few weeks for that to kick in. But now you talk about a team that now has moved on from Bobby Slowick, and we talked all NFL season about how bad he was with his play calling. So it really kind of depends on the regime that comes in. Very often you have coaches that can kind of mask some of the weaknesses on the line. On the line, one of the hardest things to handicap. So what I look for is continuity. So when you're changing guys, moving guys around, that does not bode well for success, at least in the early part of the season. It's something that they're going to have to fix. But I'd be more curious to see who is coming in, who's going to be the coordinator, what kind of strategy they employ. Is it going to be more of a pass-first offense? And kind of go from there. Because at this point, no matter who they bring in, there's no continuity. Moving on from Tunsil, I thought was a big mistake, and everything else kind of just follows off of that.
Yeah, I don't really like what they're doing at all. It feels like they're going to get killed. And as Brandon says in the comments here, Texans are spending multiple picks on the offensive line. I'm sure they will. But like, what if they don't get any guys who are going to be good this year, or guys who are never going to be good? Like it's really just kind of like playing with fire here regarding Stroud's health, and it was already bad. So I don't really like it. But I will say this though, that that Slowick it was the guy who kind of like sparked you coming on the show, because like you DM me about him, and then that got this going, and then we got you on the show, and it was great. So we definitely owe him, even though he's terrible.
Yeah, I'm just like getting on offensive lines, man. I find myself writing down when I'm taking notes, probably around July, August time, offensive line question mark. Just is so it's so hard to predict which lines are going to be good. I mean, not everybody could be the Lions or the Eagles lines, and if you don't have continuity, I would put a big fat question mark next to what they have there. Maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they hit on a tackle in the draft. It's just too hard now, too early to tell what they're doing. Why did they trade Tunsil? Was it money? Did he want more money? I thought he had a relatively newish contract recently. Was he disgruntled there? I mean, do you know anything about why they traded him?
It was odd. I didn't like. Usually, I say this all the time. Like the trades or signings that are rumored to happen almost never happen. It's like the ones that you never hear of. It's like, oh my god, how'd that happen? The Tunsil one came out of nowhere. I thought heading into the offseason, because as you know, I was pretty big on Washington at it was 22-1 odds to win the Super Bowl, and I thought that, hey, they have so much money, they could trade for Myles Garrett. Okay, it didn't happen. When that fell through, I'm like, okay, they could trade for Trey Hendrickson, which I guess is still a possibility. They could trade for a receiver, which they did with Debo. And then I thought that maybe they could sign Ronnie Stanley, and Stanley went back to Baltimore. And I was thinking, okay, what left tackle could they get? And then they out of the blue, they traded for Tunsil, and I'm like, wow, that was shocking. I didn't hear anything about Tunsil being disgruntled. But yeah, I mean, like Houston, yeah, okay, they could target a tackle, but they're drafting 25th, so they're going to have to either move up or just pray that someone they like is going to fall to them, because it's what if that doesn't happen? What if all the good tackles are gone and they're stuck with your Blake Fisher as their left tackle, which
Right.
is going to be a
Right.
disaster.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I agree with your Washington. I said if they can get all these signings, they had made some bad signings too. I mean, Debo is a great number 3 receiver, although he's maybe more. And now he's back in the gym. Now he's motivated to work out and get back into shape. He's a great number 3. They re-signed Noah Brown. Tunsil's a huge signing. Not a fan, of course, of Javon Kinlaw signing. I thought that was a waste of money for them. But you shore up that offensive line. You add some weapons for Daniels, and now that team is going to be even better. So a pretty good bet. I don't know where their odds are right now. I can't imagine they're much more than like 15 or 16-1.
I
Where's
think there's
Washington right now in your Super Bowl odds?
I think there's 17-1 I
Okay.
saw the other day. I have this pulled up here, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. Yeah, 19-1. Okay, still pretty
Okay. All
good.
right.
That's still pretty. That's a good number. I would still bet it if I hadn't already. Another one I like, by the way, Minnesota. They rose. They were 40-1, 41-1. They moved to 30-1. I wonder if this is because of Rodgers, but I don't even care about Rodgers. I was looking at this roster that Minnesota has. I was like, if you just take away quarterback from every team in the NFL, I think Minnesota has a top 3 roster. And I know that, like, okay, yeah, quarterback's the most important position, but they kind of like they have an unknown with JJ McCarthy. And last year heading into the season, everyone was down on them because of Sam Darnold. And there's a chance that McCarthy is going to be better than Darnold. I mean, he was Kevin O'Connell's handpicked guy. And I feel like as long as McCarthy is like average, I think they'll be in the playoffs. If he's above average, I think they're definitely a threat to win the Super Bowl. I like them a lot. 40,
Well,
40.
that was
Well, they
another
were
big
41
thing.
one.
That was another big thing last year, and really the difference there is Brian Flores. Right, that
Mhm.
defense was one of the best defenses in the league,
Yeah,
and that was because of an offseason change that I didn't have Minnesota's defense as good as they were, not even close. So, and it's all comes down to that coordinator and the coaching scheme. So, yeah, they have a very good roster. I think that line move is probably Rodgers based, although Rodgers is potentially a sitting duck. I mean, he is up there in age, and he certainly hasn't shown that he's going to be the Rodgers of old. I would have liked, as a Niner fan, the Niners keeping their team and signing Rodgers for a year versus giving Purdy $50+ million.
Hmm.
So I'm maybe in the minority of a lot of fans. I mean, I do like Purdy. I think Purdy is a nice, slightly above average quarterback. He's a great quarterback for $20-25 million. He's not a great quarterback if you're paying him Dak Prescott money. They're going to turn right into the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that Minnesota money, that odds is strictly a Rodgers number.
yeah, I think so too. All right, let's get into the rest of these signings. Eagles signed Aziz Ojulari, 1 year, $4 million. He's only 25. He had 6 sacks in 11 games last year. So
He'll fit in just fine.
yeah,
They just
exactly.
load up on talent.
Yeah. Just they lost Josh Sweat. They lost Brandon Graham to retirement. Although they knew that. So
Yeah, they moved on from Slay.
yeah. So they lost Slay, but yeah, I mean, yeah, on the defensive line, like that's who they lost. So they got another edge rusher. So I like what they did. Texas re-signed Derek Stingley Jr. 3 years, $90 million. It's funny that like $89 million is guaranteed, like all but $1 million is not. So that's funny. So like I wonder if he's gonna like fight hard for that last million. I mean, he has an injury history, so I was a little concerned about this, but he's really talented. So I don't mind this grade. I think or the signing I think is fine. Here's a double signing. Bengals re-signed Jamar Chase for 4 years, $161 million, and T. Higgins 4 years, $115 million. Look, I ordinarily would not give this an A grade because like this is not a bargain. I always say that like I save my A and A plus grades for bargains, but it's the Bengals we're talking about. I think we have to grade on the curve here.
Yeah, I think they had to do that. I mean, they
Yeah.
have a top offense. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Hendrickson now. And we saw how badly their defense fell off last year when they gave up a whole bunch of talent on the defensive side. Their defense was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But if they want to become that team, like, hey, we don't really care about our defense will be just fine. We were going to outscore teams. We have Joe Burrow. We want to keep him happy, keep that nucleus together. I think this is the right move. They just have to get it done, whatever it would take.
Yeah, and I was expecting the Bengals to let Higgins go just because they haven't spent the money, and they did to the owner's credit, but albeit like he hasn't really spent anything else. he just re-signed these guys and didn't address his defense at all. So it's going to be more of the same. I think the Bengals are probably going to have to be on the winning side of like 42-39 every single game next year, as opposed to being on the 39 side. John's saying if you bet the best quarterback in each division last year, you would have went 7-1 in division winners. Is that true? So NFC East, Jalen Hurts, I would say.
Jane Daniels better than Jalen Hurts.
Heading into the year, you didn't know that. So let's just say like heading into the year. Right?
I don't know that that's true anyway. I'm
okay.
making a joke after what we did in the playoffs.
You're right.
It's debate, but it's certainly a debate. It's hard to kind of say, all right, now the league will catch up and adjustments will be made. So, and given the way Hurts played throughout the playoffs, I would still probably say you have to give Hurts a slight edge.
Yeah.
Is that true though? Is it 7-1?
Well, let's run through it. So NFC South, NFC North. Jared Goff was the winner. Is he the best? I
Yeah,
think you'd have to say so. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's NFC South. It's Baker Mayfield. Um, yeah, I'd say he's the best. I mean, Penix might surpass him,
No,
but
I would definitely take Baker today over Penix. I mean, time will tell, but Baker's a better quarterback today for sure.
yeah, not very soon, I guess. NFC West.
Stafford,
Stafford, yeah, and the
sure.
Rams won the division.
Hmm.
So, all right, so we're 4 for 4. AFC East, obviously, Josh Allen.
Yep.
That's so we're
Mahomes,
5 for 5. The Ravens, AFC
Lamar.
North, Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. Uh, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I would probably put Burrow as the better quarterback, but you can make an argument both ways. That would be the one if that's the one, if that's what he's
Yeah,
referring to. Because
yeah,
there's
I
no
get
question that Stroud is the best quarterback in the South.
right. And then it's AFC West. Obviously, we know that's
Well, now it's
Mahomes.
Gino.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, if you ask some people, I think so. John, I had Prescott over Hurts. Did you really? Going to the season, okay, yeah. So we would have disagreed on that one. So I think if you exclude the AFC North because there's a tie with Jackson and Burrow, then you go 7-0. Like with our rankings here. So that's interesting. Although, like heading into this year, I don't know how to rank Hurts versus Daniels. Like as you said, maybe it's still Hurts, but I think Daniels could easily by the end of this year be superior. So it's tough to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's finish up these grades here. Ravens signed Cooper Rush, A grade here. He's usually average backup quarterbacks make $4 million a year, so he's making less than that. So the Ravens are a Super Bowl contender, obviously. So they need a good backup in
Mm-hmm.
case Lamar goes down. And so Cooper Rush proved that he could do well.
He can
And he was
handle a game or two. That's fine.
he was on a bad Dallas team last year. Like, they had CeeDee Lamb, but like no one else. They didn't really have much of a running game. Their offensive line had a lot of injuries, and beyond Lamb, they didn't have anything at all. And they had bad coaching, and yet he still handled himself pretty well in most games. Like there were a couple disastrous games, but for the most part, he did do well. So with a better supporting cast here, I think that this is a real good signing. And then the last one here, Cowboys signed Miles Sanders. I think you called this like a big splash before we started recording here. The 1 year,
All
1.77 million. I gave this a C
right.
minus. Miles Sanders does not belong in the
I
NFL.
don't know if you can give a C minus for $1 million contract.
I know. It's just
It's a
I don't know.
replacement. That's below replacement level. What is it? The bottom as minimum,
That's
almost as minimum as you can get for a vet.
yeah. I think this is veteran
Nothing
minimum.
wrong with that.
Yeah. Look,
He's not very. He's not any good.
he's not good. Like, why not just take a chance on a younger guy at the same price? Or I don't know. Who cares? I didn't give
They'll
it an
probably
F.
end up drafting Genty anyway.
That's probably true. Okay, I wanted to ask you before you go to the NCAA tournament. I wanted to ask you about some contentious signings that like I had arguments with people over, whether it was on Twitter or like other shows I've been on. I guess in like reverse chronological order, Geno Smith was traded to the Raiders, and a lot of people were saying that Geno Smith's the top 15 quarterback, and I was like, I think that's insane. I like thought of like a list, and I even had a couple people on here, and I was like, okay, let's read off the list of quarterbacks. Like, where do you have Geno Smith? And like, I came up with a Geno Smith. I think was like 21st for me.
It's
And
funny. I have a list from at some point last year. I don't know when this list is from, and I have Geno number 22.
oh, interesting. Okay, so we're right.
And you
We're
didn't
right
ask
there.
me to. I just had this written down. I don't even know when I wrote this down. Maybe this is preseason last year. So going into the season last year, I had Geno Smith. Funny, 2 spots ahead of Sam Darnold.
Oh, that's funny. It's interesting how that worked out. Would you rather have Darnold now over Geno?
Would I rather have Darnold now over Geno? I don't know. It's probably close. I'm still not a Darnold believer, and Darnold kind of proved in some of those
Yeah.
big games that he's like not the quarterback I want. Geno. We talked about this throughout the season. There were a number of times where Geno has actually led fourth quarter comebacks and has been very poised in some of those big games. On a number of occasions, he's led those drives. So he's kind of proven that he's a really solid, average quarterback, which is why I was kind of surprised that the Raiders made the move. I don't know what they're trying to gain. I mean, I guess they don't want to be really bad. They want to be a 7-8 win team, 9-win team. I mean, what's the ceiling now that they get Geno? It's not like he's coming with his receivers because they've had pretty good receivers in Seattle his entire tenure.
Mhm.
where besides for Bowers, where's he really throwing the ball to?
Yeah, it's Jacoby Myers. I mean, I like Myers, but
But
he's
that's
not
not DK Metcalf,
right.
Jackson Smith, and Jingbo and Tyler Lockett.
Right, exactly. And maybe they draft a receiver early, but this draft class isn't
I just
great
didn't
at
understand the
receiver.
trade. One of my best friends is a huge Raiders fan, and as soon as I saw it, I texted him Gino with a lot of O's, and I was surprised that he said to me after the fact, it's like, I'm not so annoyed with the trade. I thought he'd be annoyed because, like, where are you going, right?
Right.
What's your strategy? You're not going to win the division with Geno Smith at your quarterback, so why not just kind of roll the dice, go young, see what you get out of the draft, or I mean, I'm not sure what the goal is. Like, what is the Raider goal with Geno Smith? That's a quarterback that I could see, like last year, a team like a Minnesota bringing in Darnold to compete with a rookie. That's where I would put a guy like a Geno Smith. Like, hey, we're going to draft a rookie quarterback. We want you to be like a 1 year stopgap. We think we have a good roster. We don't want to throw a rookie into the fire. We want you to kind of take the helm for a year, maybe two, and see what happens. I don't know how it makes sense other than Pete Carroll connection. So for me, it's like a blah. Like, why are you doing that? What are we gaining from that? And Seattle moving on from him, I was surprised, to be honest with you, because they've been a potential playoff team with Geno Smith, and they did compete for the division. They're not a slouch team. They're not a 5-6 win team. Granted, he had his receivers. So yeah, okay. John Sanders is right. Carroll is all he wants to win now. But what does he want to win? 8 wins, 9 wins? What is their ceiling with Geno at the helm? I just didn't understand, for a bad team, why make that move. Max Crosby seemed to like that deal. Maybe that's why he resigned. That or the money he got. But I thought Max Crosby was gone. I thought Max Crosby wanted to be on a team like Myles Garrett, and I guess neither of these guys care about winning. They just want money. So good for them. They got paid. But that team's not going anywhere with Geno Smith. So I thought it was a weird trade.
The argument I've had that they're pro Geno Smith people are like, first I've heard from a number of people say that he's a top 15 quarterback, which I think is crazy. Even like, I feel like you have to account for age, right? Because you made the trade. I mean, someone to argue with, he's 35.
35. So you figure you're signing him, you got a good 2 to 3 years maybe.
Right. Can
PFF last year had him ranked 9th. But that's just, Jalen Hurts was 12. So right. CJ Stroud was 14. So, and Goff was 16. So I think we can all agree that he's certainly not as good as those quarterbacks. But he produced. Listen, he's had some good moments. He's had some game-winning drives. I just don't think he's getting you anywhere. So if I'm a young team, if I'm competing for a championship, if I want my team to grow into a championship caliber team, he's not my answer. Trading assets for that quarterback doesn't make sense. I'd rather load up on young talent or draft a quarterback this year in the draft. You never know who's going to be good. It's a complete crapshoot. I would have rather taken my chances in the draft than with Geno Smith.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't get it. As John is pointing out here, the advanced analytic nerves love him. That's one other thing I heard is like, have you seen the analytics? Like, Geno Smith is great. I'm like, I've watched him. He's good. He's okay. I mean, he's an okay starter.
He's an average. He's an average quarterback. And if I'm a young team not going anywhere, I don't need him.
Yeah, exactly. And the other argument was Geno makes the Raiders competitive. I'm like, yeah, I guess it makes them more competitive. They're not going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, sure.
But I still have them 4th in the division.
Yeah, I think you do. I think I do too. Obviously, going to take a closer look, and we still have to wait for the NFL draft to happen. But I find it very difficult to think that they're going to surpass both the Broncos and Chargers. Maybe one of them, if there are injuries, but it's going to be tough for them to get to a second place. Maybe they get to third, but I just feel like those other teams are better. And
would you rather have Bo Nix or Geno Smith?
Oh, Bo Nix. I'd rather. I can run down all the quarterbacks. Like I feel like there are only a handful I wouldn't want. As I said, I was either 21st or 22nd on him. I'd rather have all the quarterbacks from last year who were drafted last year, just because they're so young. Like,
right.
If Denver called up Seattle, the Raiders, and was like, not that they would trade within the division, but they're like, hey, we're going to offer your Bo Nix for Geno Smith. Like, who says no? Like, obviously the Broncos would be insane for doing that. The Raiders would accept it right away.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah,
That's why the trade makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. So, maybe he gets them to 8-9, 9-8. Maybe they like fight for the division. And look, maybe that's what ownership wants. Like maybe that's what Mark Davis wants. He doesn't want to be the laughing stock of the NFL anymore. Like they had that late season Monday Night Football game where they played against the Falcons and they lost, and they were kind of humiliated on national TV. Maybe he just doesn't want that, and he wants to be, hey, like take me out of the cellar, even though he's still in the divisional cellar. But like, take me to 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins, and so we're not laughed at. Maybe that's what Mark Davis wants, and if he does, I think that's a bad way to manage the team. But if that's his goal, then this trade makes sense.
Yeah, well, I thought it was weird.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on the Geno side.
Okay, let me see if you're with me on this one. So the Seahawks signed Cooper Kupp for 3 years, $45 million. When he was cut, I assumed that he was going to sign a deal for like 1 year, $3 million or something. And so there was a report saying first there was a report saying a bunch of teams are interested, like the Jaguars and the Cowboys. Seahawks were one of them. I think Broncos were there. I can't remember the fourth was. There were 4 teams who were interested, and then it trickled out that like none of these teams are interested. And then it was reported that he wanted $15 million per year, and I'm like, $15 million per year? Like, has he not seen his own film from last year? Like he was totally decrepit. He had a couple of good games here and there. His 2 best games, by the way, were when Puka Nacua got ejected or injured. He's 32. Obviously, he's old. I feel like down the stretch, he wasn't even used that much in the Minnesota playoff game. He only played 29 out of 65 snaps. Now it was a blowout, but he wasn't playing that much to start the game either. So I thought that he was overpricing himself. And then Seattle signed him for 3 years, $45 million. So I gave that an F. Some people call me crazy for that. Like I got into like a heated debate on another show, or is the pre-recording of another show with the co-host, which I'm friends with. But he was like adamant that I was insane for giving that an F grade. So what would you have given the Seahawks for signing?
I don't know if I give it an F as a complete failure, because for one season he might be a decent number 2 target. He had 4 good games last year, and he went from having, I mean, I'm looking at his log right now. He had 21 targets in week 1, 14 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, that's when Nacua got hurt.
14 targets against Seattle.
Yeah, when
Nacua got catches for 104 yards in week 4.
Nacua got ejected in the Seattle game, and he got injured in the Detroit game.
But if you look at the back half of the season, just reading down the list, 7 targets, 1, 3, 3, 3, 8, 6. He wasn't involved in an offense that knew him well, where he knew the system well, where he's buddy with Stafford. He was non-existent in a lot of those games. Is that because he's older, maybe a little bit slower? Not because if you think back like a couple of years, this guy was open all the time. Like you knew he was getting the ball. Everybody knew he was getting the ball, yet he would still be open. So clearly he's lost a step or 2. And I don't see how a guy like that gets $15 million. It just doesn't make any sense. You're paying him not as a number 1 receiver, because those guys are getting 25 plus. You're paying him as number 2 receiver. Is he going to produce? Is he a guy that can give you 70, 80 catches in a season and stay healthy for an entire season? I don't think that's the case. So I don't think it's an F, because he still could throw out, a game here and there where he gives you that 5 or 6 catches, 80 plus yards, a touchdown, and a nice third down weapon. But to do that on a consistent basis and to give him 3 years, what's the guarantee on that? Do you know?
They haven't come out with that yet.
Okay, so I mean, listen, if this is merely a 1-year deal and they're going to cut him after a year and there's really not much dead cap there, then it's hard to give him an F for that. Maybe again, like a Deebo Samuel, maybe these guys get traded and they get rejuvenated. They got to get back into the swing, and maybe he had some injuries last year that he dealt with. So I definitely don't think it's an F, but I wouldn't give it better than like a C. It's certainly not a good signing. It's not a signing that I would be excited about. If I read, hey, my team just signed Cooper Kupp, I'd be like, why? What am I signing? I'd rather draft receivers. I'd rather draft young guys, pay them nothing, and take it from there. But I certainly, I don't look at it as a complete utter failure because it's not like the NBA where you're just locking into a guy for now multiple years until you see the real terms of the contract. If this is a 1 year cut situation, then it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Certainly wouldn't be a failure of a grade.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's just like we don't have the details yet. So I see 3 years, 45 million. I assume that like it might like there's a chance that it might be bad. We just don't know yet. But you're right. I mean, if it's really like a fancy 1 year, $10 million contract that's like that has 2 extra years on it, then yeah, I mean, look, it's obviously not enough. I agree with that. So, but we don't know that yet, and just we usually don't have all the details of all the contracts when they're given out right away. So I can only grade what I see, and I see 3 years, 45 million for Cooper Kupp, who's not going to have Sean McVay anymore. He's not going to have Matthew Stafford anymore. He's not going to have a really good offensive line anymore. And so like he's not going to have anything there. And also, he and Jackson Smith and Jigba play out of the slot. So I feel like it's a weird schematic signing as well. Just didn't make any sense for me. I guess they could move JSN outside, but it's weird. I just feel like JSN's had so much success in the slot. So like, why
Well, they
sign
better
him
beef up their offensive line because Sam Darnold, if he's pressured, especially up the middle, he's a sitting duck. And he's not going to have success throwing to those. If he couldn't get Jefferson the ball in some of those games at the end of the season, he's not getting the ball out to Cooper Kupp, who can barely run an out pattern. So.
Yeah, and Seattle offense line looks dreadful in the interior. The guard center guard was the worst in the NFC last year.
And that's why, as a Niner fan, it's like I see Sam Darnold coming back into the division. Awesome.
That brings you to the next signing. Sam Darnold, 3 years, $100 million contract.
Insane. I was shocked when I saw that. $100 million.
Yeah.
I thought he cost himself $100 million in the last couple of games of the season. Between the Lions game and then the playoff game. I can't believe somebody gave him $30 million a year. He's a glorified backup quarterback. He had a very good year. Credit to him. In the big games, he didn't perform. He didn't show up. That was a 1 year wonder. Credit to McConnell. That's not gonna be duplicated in Seattle's offense. That's a crazy contract.
Yeah, well, it's kind of crazy if you think about it because last year,
I would much rather have Geno Smith in that offense than Sam Darnold.
Well, I mean, given the age, would you rather have
3 years? I don't think Geno is going to have a problem for 3 years. But again, I wouldn't give Geno Smith 3 years, $100 million either.
Right. That makes sense. I feel like with Sam Darnold, at least you have some upside because he was a former first-round pick. He was third overall, so there might be some untapped potential. Like maybe
I don't buy into that. Trey Lance was a former first-round pick too. He can't find a job.
Yeah, Jamarcus Russell too. But I think that like there's at least a chance that he does well. Whereas like Geno Smith, you know what you're getting with Sam Darnold. I think there's a chance that he might exceed the expectations, but at the same time, I think that's more likely that he struggles. I mean, he's not going to have Kevin O'Connell there. He's not going to have Justin Jefferson. Now he does have Jackson Smith and Jigba, but kind of it feels like that kind of cancels out with Jordan Addison. Maybe JSN's a little bit better, but he's not going to have that elite number one like you have Jefferson.
Exactly, and Jefferson's the key because Jefferson is on another level.
Yeah,
he doesn't have that.
Right, and
that's a lot of targets to a guy who's going to go up and make a play.
Yeah, and Seattle's offensive line much worse than Minnesota's, right. even after Christian Darrisaw got hurt. Right. and we saw Darnold just have a meltdown in the playoffs against the Rams. And you're right, like everyone was saying that he cost himself a lot of money, and apparently he didn't.
Apparently not. That's crazy contract.
Yeah. Although I did read that it's basically they can get out of that after 1 year. So again, maybe this is like Cooper Kupp where it's not too bad, but I'm not sure of the specifics of it. But I did at least see that. So Seattle is usually John Schneider is a really good general manager. He's made a lot of great moves over the years. So I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But these two signings, the Kupp signing and Darnold, like not. I don't hate the Darnold signing as much. I just think the Cooper Kupp signing was awful. But if that's also like a glorified 1 year deal, then I can at least understand that maybe this is like a transitional year or something. And they're kind of like building for the future now and trying to get a quarterback in the 2026 class, which should be better. But at the same time, if you're going to try to do that, then you should be tanking anyway. So I don't know. That is one argument I had with Kenny on here, our usual Wednesday host. He criticized my grade of the Myles Garrett re-signing, which I think I gave a D for, just because I'm like, by the time the Browns are good, Garrett's going to be on the downside of his career. He's going to be like 32 or 33. So I was like, I wanted the Browns to just trade him, get as much draft capital as possible, and then just have a major overhaul with the roster and just kind of like, try to gear yourself to either draft Cam Ward this year or try to draft Arch Manning next year or Nussmeier at the very least, and then like try to build with all this draft capital. Whereas like it just feels like they're spinning the tires, and yeah, maybe Myles Garrett's going to win them some games, but what are they going to be next year? Like 5-12 at the best, and that means they're not going to be good or not going to be bad enough to get Arch Manning. So I think, what do you think about that?
Yeah, those are hard decisions to make. You're trading or agreeing to trade your franchise player.
Mm-hmm.
But I fully agree. You're not going anywhere right now paying $40 million to Myles Garrett. And similarly, you're not going anywhere paying $30 million a year to Sam Darnold. So I look at those teams like, all right, you guys are now kind of falling in my rankings, and you're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take at some point, some of these teams have to take a hard reset, even for 1 year. In the NFL, you can turn your fortunes around real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But to spin your wheels with guys like Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, not going anywhere with those players. And Myles Garrett, for as good as he is, what is he worth to the spread? If he didn't play 1 week, we're going to take off 1.5 points, maybe. He's certainly not going to be 7 points to the line. No. He doesn't make the Browns go from a 5-win team to a 9-win team, as we've seen. So he's worth, 2 wins for the season?
Yeah, he probably takes them from 2 to 3 wins to 4 to 5 wins.
Okay, awesome. It's not what I want.
Right.
So it's time to, if you don't have a quarterback and you don't have a team, it's time to reboot. You got to use these guys as assets. We've seen this in the NBA where teams are able to kind of reset by trading some of these players and getting tons of draft capital. And if you draft right, you become like the Oklahoma City Thunder. All of a sudden, they turned all these draft picks and now they're the number 1 team in the league or top 3 team in the league. So if I'm the Browns, I would have been very unhappy if I'm a Browns fan trading Myles Garrett, but you keep him, awesome. You can root for him, that's great. You're going to win 5 games.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, what's the price of it? I mean, like if you're a dad when you're taking your son to a game and you're like, hey, there's Myles Garrett, and then you get to root for it. I don't know. Maybe that's something, but at the same time, like that team's going to lose 30-10, and like I don't know. If I'm the kid, I'd rather see
my team doesn't have I'd rather win games.
Right.
I'd rather accumulate draft capital.
Exactly. Yeah.
And get better in 2 years.
Yeah. It's
look at Houston. Houston was the worst team in the league. They were running out quarterbacks that who was the now I'm drawing a blank again. Backup quarterback last year started 2 years ago.
Davis Mills.
Houston. Davis Mills. Mm-hmm. They were running him out every week. He was awful. And now they're a perennial playoff team.
Yep.
This is what it is. That's what you if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going anywhere. So as good as Myles Garrett is, they had to reboot, and they didn't. So now they're going to stink for another 2 years and see what happens. Maybe they draft a quarterback, maybe not. Maybe they hit on a quarterback, maybe they don't. But that pick's not going to take them anywhere.
Yeah, it was like
Davis Mills, not going to take them anywhere.
Davis Mills, Jeff Driscoll, like they're signing all these bums. And you're right. I mean, like that's what happened. They ended up with the 2nd and 3rd pick in that draft where they got Stroud and Will Anderson, and we see what that has given them. It'd be different if Myles Garrett was like 26, and like obviously you would resign him then because by the time maybe you're ready to make a playoff push, he's 28, 29, he can still play.
You have to have a quarterback. If you don't have a quarterback, you got no shot.
Yep. Yeah.
And exactly. then you get a good quarterback on a rookie contract, and then you start loading up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. When's Charlie on the stream this week? It's gonna be on next week. I feel like we can close out free agency this week, so next week he's gonna be on. So hopefully Charlie has some draft props for us. All right, I feel like we can transition unless we have anything else. Anything else on these signings? Anything else in the NFL before we move on to NCAA tournament?
This is the most I've spent on NFL talk since Super Bowl.
Nice. Well, glad to have you catch up on
refresh some of my memory, which
exactly.
I'll put this aside now until the draft, week before the draft.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like a month later you get back into this, and then about a month from now, we have the NFL draft, which it's like kind of terrifying because I feel like there's so much work to do. So it's 5.5 weeks from now. So 5 weeks and 2 days.
For me,
It's
it's like
always,
cramming for a test. You follow this every second of the day.
yes,
It's great.
it's
Credit to you. I'd
it's
rather
it's
cram for the test, a week before.
it's scary. I told this story on Saturday, so apologize, but you haven't heard it. I was getting married in 2018. Our wedding was going to be Memorial Day weekend, and my sister was having a birthday party for her 1-year-old daughter, and so our whole family's there. And I was talking to my aunt, and this is like 2 weeks before the NFL draft, and she's like, Walt, are you ready for the big day? I'm like no, I'm not. She's like really? What's wrong? You're getting cold feet? I'm like no, I mean, I have so much work to do for the draft is coming up. I have so much research to do. I have so many people to talk to. She's like, Walt, I was talking about your wedding. It's just like I was like, man, I was just so zoned into the NFL draft. I was like, man, but no, obviously when the draft is over, then obviously shifted gears. But it's that's how I always feel. I always feel like so underwhelmed or sorry, overwhelmed for the NFL draft when it's coming up. And then somehow it like all magically comes together, but it's like there's so much like research to do to like try to get the most accurate draft and try to get like all the draft props correct and stuff. So yeah, we'll be talking to Charlie next week. I want to give him the week off. He had to fly back from Indianapolis. He has he has a kid at home and stuff like that. So he'll be on next week. So we'll have him on. Maybe he'll give us some nuggets for draft props. I haven't looked at any because I can't bet them in PA. I have to drive to New Jersey to bet them. So I haven't been to New Jersey for a while. So next time I go, I'll be looking at the draft props for sure. All right. So let's dive into the NCAA tournament, which starts. I guess it starts now. Technically, I don't count these playing games, but
Carolina just made a statement. They won by 30.
I saw. Yeah, I saw they crushed San Diego State. I didn't really look at that matchup. I kind of even forgot that game was going on. I hate these playing games, by the way. It's like, I don't know, it feels like it taints the tournament a little bit. It's still super fun to watch, but at the same time, it's like, can you just start it on Thursday at noon like they always do? The tradition for me was like, I'd wake up in college. I'd wake up on Thursday. I'd usually have like some classes in the morning, but then I would watch at 11:30. The CBS would have The Price is Right on, and so I'd watch that. And then at noon, then the next half hour later, the games would start. And so that's how I would start my day as always. But it feels like it's like you have to watch these 2 games or these 4 games before that. It's kind of stinks. But anyway, so we have I don't know like where your overarching thoughts are, like as far as who you think is going to win this tournament. And like what the best futures bets are for this. So I posted my picks on the site, and it's funny. I actually texted you what you thought, and like I guess we're looking at some of the same analytical data. Like you've obviously watched this more than I have, but 2 of my bets were like the two of the 3 bets you recommended. But I don't know if you made any adjustments or made any other thoughts or any other bets. So what are you betting here for the tournament?
Well, let me give you, and I'll give your audience. I mentioned this a few times during the NFL season, and the way I bet basketball is very different from the NFL and from the way most people bet sports in general. I personally, now I took a few futures bets really for fun, and I'm in a bunch of these bracket tournaments again, really for fun. There's nothing more to it than that. I did take a couple of futures on Houston, which is my team this year that I'm kind of riding with. And then I looked for some odds. I got Houston at plus 750. I see FanDuel has 650.
Mm-hmm.
I have an offshore book that I got plus 750 on Houston. I have St. John's for fun at 20-1. So it was a 20-1 shot. Yeah, okay. What is that? Is that 28?
Yeah, 28-1.
Oh, geez. Why did I get 20-1? Okay. Bad bet. I have Bama at 19-1.
Yeah, 18-1 here.
I have Michigan State at 30-1.
32-1 here.
32. Okay, so that line moved today. I have Kansas at 80-1. Rock Chalk. Kansas Jayhawks.
120-1 here. Wow.
120. Oh my God, I'm getting murdered. See, this is bad. And I have Tennessee at 21-1.
Okay. 24-1 here.
24. So I'm getting hammered on all those bets. So these are all bad bets. So why are these all bad bets? First of all, do I really think? I mean, these teams certainly all could win, right? These are all. Well, Kansas probably not, but That's because I'm a fan of the team. So
Okay.
these teams, do I think there's a shot? Probably, but I'm laying now 6 teams, right? So what am I really looking to make on this bet? It's not really a way to win money. That's again for fun. The way I play college basketball and NBA when the games matter, and now college basketball is very simple. I have not bet, and I can give you leans. We can talk about certain types of bets, whatever. The way I bet basketball is very simple. I wait for runs. I bet against the runs. If Team X is up by 10, I like Team B, right? And you got to be strategic. So some people say, well, I don't want to bet that way for multiple reasons. Number one, it's basically work, right? I'm sitting with a computer or a phone or a tablet and I'm watching the odds move. And some people would say, well, that's work. Like, I don't really want to do that. I want to watch a game. I want to enjoy the game. Some people also say, like, if you love what you're doing, it's not really working. So I love watching basketball. I love I love the competition. I love the tournament in general. And I love watching the math and watching the odds and then taking advantage of it and winning money. So I don't view it as work when I'm sitting with my 4 screens. I have 4 TVs in this room that I'm sitting in now. I'm watching 4 games at a time, and I'm following the odds of at least 2 or 3 of those games on various, probably 2 different books because it's really hard to follow so many books. So I kind of pick 2 that I think generally have the best lines. I've talked to you about this before. Also, where there's variance, so I can get dog versus favorite at the right number or over versus under at the right number. And sometimes you could see a total at the same point in the game that's 2 or 3 points different. So if I like the over, obviously I'm taking the lower number. If I like the under, obviously I'm going the higher number. So I bet games where I'm watching a game where the line pregame, let's say, is pick 'em or 2 or whatever the line is, and the variance that I take advantage of is as the game is going on, there's an ebb and flow to basketball, just the way it goes. Most games have runs. And back in the day, you would see a tale of 2 halves. So you could sometimes wait for halftime. Sometimes you just wait for like a nice team goes on a 12-0 run, timeout, whomever, and now you bet the team that's behind. And the idea is not so much that they're going to win, but that they're going to make a run back. And at various points of the game, maybe I like a team. Let's just throw out a game for a second. Let's look at a game that's like kind of like a pick'em game. So Louisville Creighton, right? So what's the line in Louisville Creighton? Let me just open up my little spreadsheet here. Louisville Creighton line's 2.5.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the current line. 2.5. If the lines are slightly off, forgive me. If Louisville goes up by 7, 8 points or 10 points, I like Creighton because the odds tell me that this is a close to a pick'em game. If I'm getting plus money on Creighton, so maybe I like Creighton going into the game, which I happen to like Creighton going into the game. So if I like Creighton going into the game, now I can play Creighton at a better number, right? So instead of plus 112, maybe I'm getting Creighton plus 250 or somewhere in that ballpark. Or later in the game, maybe even better. Maybe there's 10 minutes to go or 8 minutes to go, and then down by 12 or 14 points, which, by the way, is nothing. Especially with these college games, you see momentum is real. A lot of teams can't break press, and just the snowball effect takes place. So teams make threes. In this case, Creighton has a guy, Ashworth, who can make threes, and maybe Louisville starts turning the ball over, and a 12 or 14-point lead could become 4 in a couple of possessions. And then, boom, timeout Louisville. And now what do I do with that bet? So I either ride it because now I have a great number on Creighton, or I hedge it. Now, I always hedge it. I'm in the business of making money and moving on. So I'll hedge Louisville at that point. At that point now, the market number on Louisville, let's say now they're back to what it was. Let's say Louisville now leads by 4 or 3. So now it's like minus 120 or whatever the line is. I have a plus 250 or a plus 300 on Creighton. I'll play maybe like to cover my bet. So I'm playing almost like a free roll. Maybe I'll play where there's some profit margin. And then maybe I wait even more and now Creighton takes the lead. And now I'm betting Louisville. I'm on the Louisville side. I'm watching games sometimes with other people, and I'm rooting for Creighton, just to use it as an example. And now 5 minutes later, I'm rooting for Louisville, and somebody would look at me like, I thought you were rooting for Creighton. I'm like, no, now I'm rooting for Louisville. But I don't care, because as I joke around about these games, I say, well, they're paying me $50 to watch this game, and I make a $300 bonus on Team X. And that's the way I'll bet a lot of these games. I have an opinion, because I've done some research, and I've watched a bunch of these teams, and I believe in strength of schedule a lot. We've talked about this in the NFL playoffs, but it's so hard in a one-game college basketball kids scenario to kind of say, well, this is a comparable game, or they haven't beaten anybody all season. Like, yeah, obviously the teams in the crappier divisions haven't beaten anybody, but upsets happen every single year. So if you think it doesn't happen and you're just going to bet and bet and bet because Auburn might be behind, or a bad example, let's say Michigan. Well, it's another bad example. They're a 2.5-point favorite. So let's say a team that's like, I don't know, let's use Tennessee, 18.5-point favorite. If they're behind, am I just going to start pounding away betting Tennessee because I think Tennessee's really good and the odds are a little bit better? Not necessarily, because they certainly could get upset. It's not like, oh, they're for sure going to win in this one game sample. We talked about this last week with the Duke game, right? Duke was losing, I forget to who.
Georgia Tech.
Duke, right. And Flag got hurt. And I said, Duke is down big. They're probably going to win, but I don't really want to bet this without Flag because they don't really need the game, right? They're probably locked into the 1 seed. And you made a comment like, hey, let's bet the other side. I'm like, no, don't do that. Because as Duke makes a run, which they likely will make a run, the odds will move in your favor or against you betting on the dog. So you don't want to bet the dog in that situation. It's favorite or pass, right? And similarly, if a dog is down big, I don't want to lay the points with the favorite because the dog can make a run and I'm going to get a much better line. So to wrap it up on strategy, I'm looking for teams that are kind of in this pick 'em type of game or a game that I think could go either way where I'm playing the runs. And yes, it's work. Yes, the reason not to do it is because you're sitting with a spreadsheet or a computer or a phone while you're watching games, and some people might not find that enjoyable. Or some people bet so much that they can't physically bet enough on a live bet, unless you're sitting in Vegas or in Atlantic City or whatever in a sports book and you have a big fat account, because most books will limit the bet. So if you're betting a couple $1,000s on a game and you can only bet like $200-300 on a live bet, so it's not worth it for you. Or people don't have access to live betting, in which case, shame on you. Get FanDuel or DraftKings, any of these places, and you'll have access right away. So I like taking advantage, and I don't have to know anything. I can watch Michigan against UC San Diego, and from my watching of San Diego, they look like a nice team. They look like a scrappy team, but they don't have nearly the size to defend Michigan's bigs. And that's a very, very trendy upset pick, hence the line moving from 3.5 to 3 to 2.5. And now we can talk about this as we go forwards. All these trendy picks. I'd rather be on the book side, on the house side of all the trendy picks. Like I don't want to be on the 12 seed that every single person is going to take. I'd rather take the 5 seed that no one's going to take, except for the professionals. Although that line did drop, and that's pro money originally coming in when the line's open. But that's a type of game where if Michigan's behind, I'm going to bet Michigan. But if Michigan's ahead by 12, 15 points, and I'm watching the other team, and maybe they're down because Michigan's hot, or maybe they're down because they can't make a shot. So maybe I would bet the dog in that situation, getting a huge plus number. So right now, what's that line? Plus 116. If I saw that game, so I think my handicap in that game is Michigan's too big. They have multiple 7-footers. UC San Diego does not. So if Michigan's just dominating with their size, so I don't touch the game. But if Michigan's just hot from the outside and UC San Diego is ice cold, and that kind of pendulum will swing a little bit, the regression to the mean on shooting percentages. And we see that a lot. Teams come out and they just can't miss. And Carolina came out tonight. They couldn't miss the entire game. And that game was over at halftime. They were up by 20. There was no money line even available. But if I see UC San Diego is kind of competing, they're just missing, even though I'm going into the game thinking, yeah, I like Michigan because they're size edge, I wouldn't mind playing UC San Diego getting 5-1 or 7-1 with 10 minutes to go, hoping, hey, they can press. Michigan is very poor at turning the ball over. They also can't make free throws. These are things that I look for as I'm handicapping teams now. Can you handle pressure? Can you make free throws? I want to know which teams have good guard play. They have Trey Donaldson. They have a guy who had the game winner against Maryland in the Big Ten tournament. But generally speaking, they turn the ball over because Danny Wolf is a 7-footer who kind of plays point. And they can't make foul shots. So that's a team that's ripe to be ahead by 10, 12, 14 points. And all of a sudden, there's 5 minutes to go, 4 minutes to go, and UC San Diego goes on a nice run. And I'm not suggesting they're going to win the game, but give me 7-1. If they make a run, I'll hedge it back the other way. So that's the way I play sides. Now, totals, I've described to you.
Well, before we get to totals, I wanted to ask you, what constitutes a run? Is it is a certain number, or is it just
it's just feel? Generally, I like the run to end with a timeout, right?
Okay.
So you can kind of feel a game, kind of back and forth. Teams up 2, up 4, up 2. All of a sudden, they go on a 12-2 run. Timeout, San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, Michigan's now up 20. End of the first half. Towards the end of the first half, it's now 30-19. So do I really want to bet it at that moment? No, because I want to wait a little bit longer because as I wait until the second half or halftime, I'm going to get a much better odds. Like that, those odds will jump at halftime versus jumping in the first half. For whatever reason, that's just the way the algorithm works. So at halftime, and usually that's when I would like to bet it. I don't really want to bet in the first half. I want to wait for halftime. I see a team, okay, they just need a break, right? Michigan went into the half. They went on a 12-2 run to end the half. They're up 34-22 at halftime. And I want to watch the game. I want to get a feel for the game. Again, is it missed shots or is it just this team is too small? Or am I watching Creighton against Louisville, which is kind of two evenly matched teams, or Oklahoma, UConn, or teams like that are kind of relatively evenish teams based on the spreads and metrics, that one team just went on a run before halftime. Give me the dog at halftime. I'll get better plus money on that team. And my hope is that, and the bet, not the hope, the bet, is that they make a run at some point in the second half. And we see this all the time. So I'll do it at halftime. And again, you got to be disciplined, because if you can live bet dogs that are behind, you could be doing this for 20 minutes in the second half. So you got to be careful. You don't want to throw away, if your unit's $100 on a game or $200 on a game, you don't want to take 10 bets on that dog that's behind, just waiting for them to make that run, because sometimes it doesn't happen. Or sometimes you don't time it well. But I want to wait, maybe 6-7 minutes to go in a game. A team just goes on a run, timeout. We see it all the time, and the run comes back the other way. So I really like, when I'm watching these games, despite whatever my opinion is going in, watch for the runs, look for those odds that you on your screen that are open right now. Look for those odds to move in my favor. Like UNC Wilmington, like plus 920. I have no desire to go into this game with UNC Wilmington plus 920. And probably if Texas Tech comes out and just blows them out of the gate from the jump, I probably don't want any interest in UNC Wilmington, because I'm not going to get a hedge back on Texas Tech. But if Texas Tech is down early for whatever reason, I won't get a good price on Texas Tech until later in the game. So I got to wait. But as time now runs out, if UNC Wilmington leads by 6 or 8 points with 5 minutes to go, and I'm getting Texas Tech now like 4-1, the game's not over with 5-6 minutes to go. I will happily take Texas Tech 4-1 or 5-1 or even 3-1, right? I don't want to take them even money, because I just don't think that's a good value. But I want to take them where, hey, they're only down by 6-7 points. That's nothing. In basketball, that's nothing. I can make that up, and that's where I want to watch the game and watch the odds. So if this game, maybe this line is too high. Maybe we have to look at a line that's more like a 7 to 11 point spread, not an 18 point spread. So if you look at a game right there in Maryland, Grand Canyon, scroll up a little bit. So that line is 430. So if Grand Canyon's up by 6-7 points with 7 minutes to go, they're going to be favored in the game. Now, I'm not suggesting I like Maryland in the game. I don't have an opinion really one way or another. But if I'm watching the game and Grand Canyon's on fire and Maryland can't make a shot, but now Maryland starts getting momentum. They start gaining, maybe like the other night, Duke, North Carolina, perfect example. Carolina's down 21 at halftime. When they were down by 10 with like 8 minutes to go, I got Carolina plus 1,000, 10-1. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, why did I bet it at that time? They made a run, so they showed fight. Duke is now on the wrong side of momentum, and Carolina has plenty of time to continue pushing that run. So I take Carolina 10-1. As they cut it even closer, now again, they ended up basically tying the game at the very end, except for a lane violation. When that number got down to like Duke by maybe 3 or 4, I bet Duke minus 330. It's like, what the hell are you doing betting Duke minus 330? Well, I have Carolina 10-1.
Right.
So on one hand, I have Carolina 10-1. On the other hand, I'm laying Duke minus 330. I'm playing a free roll on Carolina with a little bit of profit towards Duke, and eventually you win a little bit. That's okay. I thought if Carolina wins that game, I win a lot. I win $1,000 on basically a $100 bet or $50 bet, right? So I'm in for minimal on that 10-1, and I'm hedged as long as they continue making a run. And that was the bet at that particular moment, that they were going to continue to cut into this lead. There was plenty of time. The momentum was on their side. And I saw that they showed fight. And that's another thing you see in this tournament. Teams that are behind show fight. They don't quit when they're down by 15, 20 points. As a matter of fact, teams are fouling with 2 minutes to go down by 15, which will bring us to our next moneymaker in tournament play. So I like watching these games. There's 4 games on a time or 3 games on at a time. There's always comebacks. There's always teams making runs. It's rare to see a game where one team just completely leads wire to wire, although we saw it tonight. And if you watch the game tonight, I didn't touch San Diego. San Diego State.
Yeah.
First of all, we were getting onto a podcast, and Carolina was just hot right out of the gate. And I was looking for that money line, and it didn't even exist. So by the time I looked for it, they're down by 20 at halftime. The money line's gone. So I look for that way to bet these games, really banking on runs. And if you hedge, this is where I got kicked out of Caesars 3 years ago. Second weekend of the tournament. I did this for the first weekend. I did it partial second weekend. And it wasn't like you don't have to win thousands of dollars. If you start betting on one team and then almost always betting on the other team and profiting every single game, almost every single game, you will get shut down very quickly on some of these DraftKings, FanDuel's, Caesars apps because they'll see they're offering cash outs and you're not taking their cash outs. You're basically using your own cash out in your mind by betting the other team with a minimal amount of your equity in that game.
Well, real quick, wouldn't you recommend going on the other side on a different sportsbook then?
Yes, you definitely should. But again, you want the best odds.
Right.
So part of it is that. And also there's a convenience factor. So when you start logging in and out of accounts, it's kind of annoying. Like I joke around, like I need assistance. You could sit with multiple books, multiple spreadsheets, multiple people following different games, and you can really take advantage. And we do this for some games where, it's like real standalone games. Like I'll have different people looking at different books, but if you're hedging runs in college basketball tournaments, I don't want to say you can't lose because you can lose anything. You can get greedy. You can miss the moments. But if you're looking for those runs and waiting for those timeouts, so often you have teams making runs late. And we saw this last year. Like I was getting teams 20-1, 15-1 that are down 10 late, and they just make a run. And teams can't handle pressure, and they can't make free throws. And then you get a three, and then there's a timeout, and they set up a press, and the ball is inbounded into the corner. And next thing you know, teams that are smart are pressing with 2-3 minutes to go. Teams are not going 8 for 8 from the line. You foul a team 4 times, 5 times. Maybe they go 6 for 10. Maybe they miss a front end of a 1-and-1. All it takes is 2 threes. All of a sudden it's an 8-2 run back, and now you're hedged out. And then you bet the other. It's so profitable to watch some of these runs happen. It's unbelievable for sides. Now, as far as pregame, there are a bunch of dogs as we go through some of the matchups. We can look at some of the dogs that I think are live. Where you're getting 7.5, 8.5, 10, 11 points. To me, if you're betting that way, and I'm not, but if you are, it's like, hey, I'll take that team plus 7.5. I'll take Yale, or I'll take New Mexico, or some of these other dogs that I think have value on the money line. And I would rather be on the money line, by the way, than on the spread. Because a team that's down by 3 or 4 points the entire game can easily lose the game by 9, 10 points, and your 7.5 goes out the window. I'd rather have the money line, and then, of course, hedge it, when the opportunity presents itself. So I look for sides where there's runs, game of runs. You see it so many times. Think in your mind, a tale of two halves, or this team went on a run. How many times have you seen Iowa State biggest lead 12, this one's biggest lead 8, right? So the numbers just go back and forth.
Right.
And you can take advantage of that by playing off of the initial line and getting value, of course, on both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Before we get into the totals and stuff, did you have any you kind of like broke down the Michigan UC San Diego thing where the Michigan had too much size for the other team. Is there anything else, any matchups that stand out to you in the opening round, or do you have any leans on sides in the opening round? Or
I've kind of gone through my initial bracket. There's a bunch of teams, and I look at strength of schedule, and I look at some teams you want to take some of these 12 seeds, just using the 12-5s as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado State's favored. So why is Colorado State favored? First of all, what is the current line on Colorado State? Just curious.
Colorado State's -1.5. I actually think on
-4.5.
-1.5, -118. So really
-1.5. Okay, so that line was up to 2.5. I'm pretty sure that's because one of the guys on Memphis, Tyrese Hunter, is questionable. One of their best defensive players is questionable. They also have PJ Haggard. He was pretty good. So they have some guys, and I think the whole world is on Colorado State, which is why they're favored in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I like to fade that. So my pick for that game is Memphis, and I think they're well coached, and I think they have guys. They have a guy last year who was on Illinois, and I only remember his name, Danger, because I just remember Iron Eagle, like it's Danger Zone or Danger Time from
I love
Illinois.
it.
And Illinois was pretty good last year. So I just remember Danger, and he's now in Memphis, and they have PJ Haggerty, who's a potential NBA pick, and I have Tyrese Hunter, who's questionable. Now, Colorado State has a potential first round NBA pick named Nick Clifford. I just think they haven't beaten anybody. So, if the whole world is on one side, just my logic tells me I'd rather be on the house side. Same goes for some of these other games like who is it? Like Liberty. Everybody likes Liberty over Oregon.
Mhm.
There, I like the coach, right? Dana Altman has pedigree. He kind of has teams ready to play. I wouldn't lay the points. What is Oregon? Oregon's probably favored. Oregon's favored by 6.5. So that's a pick that I'm making on Oregon. And again, I would go into that game looking, hey, if Oregon's down, that's a team I'm going to look to bet, right? Michigan, I wanted to be on San Diego, but I'm not just because of the size. I mentioned that. I wanted to be on Marquette, but I like New Mexico. When I was reading about New Mexico, that was one of the sides that I was looking like, I actually like what this team has. Where are my notes on New Mexico? So New Mexico is actually funny. It's coached by Pitino's son. And I'm thinking like they're playing Marquette. Who knows Marquette as well as anybody is his father, right? Rick Pitino. So maybe Richard Pitino calls dad and says, hey, what could you tell me about Marquette? Yeah, we know Cam Jones is really good. Again, a potential NBA pick. But New Mexico also has 2 potential NBA players, really one, but maybe a second. So I look at New Mexico, and are they underdogs in the game? Yeah, they're 4-point dogs. So that's a team that I would lean towards as a live dog. I don't care about points in basketball. I don't want to lay -10. I want the money line, and I want them to take a lead. And if I can get the other side back, then I'm happy to do it. So that's a team that I kind of like. But I love Michigan State. Again, that's an Izzo factor. Like that team, I feel like always just ends up in the Sweet 16. So Michigan State is a team that I'm looking to ride. Iowa State, who I really like in the Big 12, has a lot of injuries. So that's a team that I might look to fade. Depending on who plays for them. There's a couple of guys who are questionable. There's a lot of guys questionable actually throughout the entire tournament. Flag obviously is the biggest name. Duke's got 5 NBA players on the roster. They're clearly the best team. But if Flag's not healthy, I mean, is this like a Mahomes situation where they tell you he's got a sprained ankle, a week later he's back at full strength? I don't know. Right? We don't know anything about this guy's ability to recover. We don't know anything about his injury. I guess we'll see. If he comes out on Friday and plays 33 minutes, in a game against a 16 seed, first of all, that'll be pretty stupid. But if he's able to play 30-plus minutes, well, then it pretty much tells you he's totally fine. While Duke's going to make a long run, they have 5 NBA players on the roster. So they're just, when I look for some of those things, like Georgia, Gonzaga. I'm on Gonzaga. I don't really like it so much. Georgia, who's not that good of a team, has a couple of very good wins. Georgia obviously played in the SEC. They beat Florida, right? They're a team. Let's see, Georgia. They beat Florida. They won a game at Texas. They beat Kentucky, and they beat St. John's. So they're not that good of a team, but they have some major wins. Whereas I look at some of these smaller conference teams, like Yale. Yale won last year. Yale beat Yale beat Auburn last year, as I believe a 13 seed. And they had Danny Wolf last year, who's now in Michigan. They have somebody else who returned. I forgot his name. One of these shooters on Yale. Everybody's picking Yale. So I mean, do I want to be on Yale because the whole world is picking them? I'm not going to be on Yale. I'm going to be on Texas A&M, because of Wade Taylor IV, and because that's an SEC battle-tested team. So I look for those teams in the major conferences, really the Big 12 and the SEC. The other conferences stink. I'm going to go against Louisville. I'm going to go against Clemson just because the ACC is really down. The Big East is down. The Big 10 for sure is down. So, I mean, Duke just ran through the ACC without Flag. So I'm going to go against Louisville just because I want to go against some of those conferences. But that's really just merely kind of picking games before the games start, looking at some of the strength of schedule. But I think betting these games, if you want to win money betting these games, wait for the position to take on the value and hedge it. Because you will win more than 80% of your games. You're not going to win every one. If you're disciplined, right? Discipline keeps you from betting the same team, chasing a team that's bad money. Try not to bet a team more than twice, right? If you bet them once and they don't make a run, they're down big again, and you find value in betting them a second time, okay, cool. Don't bet it a third time. Once they're down big, okay, that's it. You lost the game. It happens. But if you can find an opportunity to hedge and then play with the equity in the game, you can go back and forth. I mean, I've seen wild line swings. I'm sometimes late in these games, and I kind of use like plus 300 or plus 350 as kind of my magic number. I'll end up with both teams at plus 300 often. Think about that. Oftentimes, in the last 5 to 7 minutes of the game, you will get both teams at plus 250 to plus 350.
That's crazy.
And it happens. And when and this is why last week was such a beautiful week. There are 60 games on Thursday. It's 45 games on Friday. I got 5 games going on. I have 4 TVs plus an iPad. I have 5 games going on. I'm like lacking televisions in this room, and they're like, I'm just going to change the channel to the teams to the games that are close that I can hedge and bet. And there's always something to bet. If a game's a blowout, I turn it off. And that kind of takes me into what I wanted to talk about, the totals.
Okay.
Anyone not making money on totals is not paying attention in college basketball. It is the easiest thing to bet in sports is late elimination game overs. And I told you this before. You wait for 5 minutes to go, 4 minutes to 5 minutes again. I know you said you kind of missed out. You were like 1-5 or 1-6 at a time. And I think you were maybe using the wrong sports book because I was hitting those games because DraftKings and the offshores are like 3 points off. So if you're betting on FanDuel or DraftKings, you might be getting a bad line. But in the end of these games, there are so many foul shots to go around. When a team is down by, let's say, 6-7 points to, let's say, 13 to 15 points, these teams are fouling. And if they're smart, they're fouling with 2 minutes to go. There are multiple games last week that had 30-plus points in the final 4 minutes of the game, including on Sunday, the Yale championship game. I think it was 37 points in the final couple of minutes. It is maybe 31 points in the final 2 minutes. It is insane. If you get a team that you see is attacking the rim, either getting fouled, or the team that's ahead doesn't want to foul and they kind of give up a layup, or a team that has shooters that can make 3-point shot, and they're going for fouls. Like, a minute and a half to go, they make a 3, they're down by 12, down by 9, timeout. You know they're setting up a press. So what's going to happen on the press? They're either going to foul or they're going to give up a layup. And then they're going to take the ball out, sprint down the court, go to the rim, foul, stops the clock, make some free throws, maybe get a layup, maybe get an and one. And if you have an under in that situation, you're watching that like, oh my God, can you please stop fouling? And you're kind of doing the math in your head, like, I can give up 12 points in the last 2 minutes. I'm good. You're not good. These points never end. So when you're playing a close game that is, let's say, 6-7 to 12, 13 points or 14 points, that is the time to hammer an over. If it's a one-possession game, 2-3 points, you can't touch it. There's nothing happens in overtimes, and nothing happens in the last like 3-4 minutes of a tie game. Each team takes the ball, they dribble the air out, they take the air out of the ball for 20 seconds, they take a bad shot. The next team gets the ball, same idea. Down by 1, 2, 3 points, nothing happens. You need overtime to go to hit your over there. But if you're watching these games and you know that these teams don't want to go home, and even the smaller teams, they're going to foul. They don't want to go home. This is their last time playing on national TV, on a national stage. Hey, I'm down 20 points in Tennessee. I don't care. I'm fouling. I'm fouling and I want to take a shot. All right. And you mentioned before, what if the scrubs come in? I don't see scrubs coming in until like the last 30 seconds of a game. You don't see teams emptying their bench. So unless you see like a 20-plus point blowout, in which case go reverse, bet the under. I love these late game, and you could bet them over and over and over again because you'll get, let's say, a line that's, let's say for argument's sake, 148, and there's a bunch of points. Let's say it's based on like a 4 points per minute, right? The line for the second half is 80. You're looking at 4 points, maybe a little bit more in the last 2-3 minutes, maybe 4.5. So you're in the last 4 minutes, you're looking at like a 17.5 point total. But you just got 5 or 6 points in a minute. Bet it again. Bet it again. Bet it a third time. So once you have 148, now the line's up to, let's say, 151, 152, you're good on your 148. Bet it again at 151. Bet it again at 153. Or bet the team total for the team that's ahead because you don't know if the team that's behind is going to make those threes, but you know they're fouling. They're down by 7-8 points. Even if they miss, they're still fouling. So if you're watching these games and you have an advantage, you know that the team is fouling. The algorithm doesn't. The algorithm just knows that the line is 4.5 per minute. You know that they're fouling. I joked around last year. I think I told you I was at the Iowa LSU women's game, and I was sitting 8 rows behind the LSU bench. And I'm listening, I'm watching the LSU coach, Kim Mulkey, telling her team foul. So what am I doing? I'm betting Iowa team total overs. because they're fouling Caitlin Clark, who's an excellent free throw shooter. And I'm laughing as I'm doing this. I had two phones with me. And I'm sitting, and someone said, like, why don't you bet the over? I'm like, no, I don't want to bet the over. These girls can't score. But I know they can foul, and I know Caitlin Clark can make foul shots. So I must have taken that like 4 or 5 times, paid for my tickets. So that's what I would recommend in these games. Hedging teams that are behind, late over-unders. And just so you know, I kind of track this. So for years, the second half under is the way to go. Last year, I think I told you this before. Last year, the second half under for the whole was 37-23 and 3. 37-23 on the second half under, but you still would have made a lot of those overs late. And as far as first halves are concerned, those usually go over more than under. So because the way the book set it up, if you have a game that's like lined at 130, it's going to be, let's say, 61-70 or 61-69 will be your totals. They kind of give a little bit more points for the free throws. So therein lies some value first half over the total and second half under the total. And the numbers back that up after years of data. You generally get more first half overs. Last year, the first half overs were 35-28. Unders, like I said, 37-23 for the second half. Last year, favorites were unbelievable. Against the spread, 39-22-2 against the closing line. So maybe that was a precursor for like the NFL season, which was just purely a favorite season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend going out, hey, I'm going to lay Auburn -20. Or I'm going to lay, whoever it is, Florida -28. What I'd rather do is watch the game. Let's say Houston, SIUE. So what do I like in that game? SIU is not going to score because Houston's going to come out and defend. They don't lose to bad teams, and they blow bad teams out. But I don't want to bet an under because Houston might score on every single possession. What I do want to bet is the SIUE team total under by half. I don't want to deal with the end of the game. But if I'm watching that half and they can't score, and you see, hey, their line is, let's say, 20 for the half, right? Whatever it is, 22 for the half, whatever that number would be. I'm thinking, like, you know what? They can't score. I just want to bet their team total under. And as it goes down, I'm going to keep betting their team total under because the only thing I know for a fact in that game is Houston's going to play defense. Houston might not make shots, or they might make every shot, or Houston might get steals and have runouts for layups. What I know for sure is that team is going to show up to play defense. They're well coached. They don't lose to bad teams. Their 4 losses this year are by a combined 14 points. They've lost to some of the top teams. They do not lose to bad teams. I want to see who they lost to. Houston. This is one of the reasons why I love Houston. They're like almost like upset proof in some capacity. So a lot of teams like Auburn, I don't like Auburn's guard play. They're weak at the guard. They're very strong at the forward. Obviously, Janai Broom, but I don't like their guard play. So they're ripe to be upset against the Creighton or Louisville in the second round. It wouldn't surprise me. Auburn, who's lost 3 or 4, that's not a team like Houston. Houston's just not going to lose to some of these mediocre teams. Where is my Houston notes? I'm just trying to pull it up here. When is Houston playing? Oh, here it is. They've won 26 of their last 27 games. The only loss was by 1 point in overtime against Texas Tech. And they just don't lose to the bad teams. So let me just pull up real quick who Houston has played, because it's just impressive to watch. Houston Cougars. Their losses are to Auburn by 5, Alabama by 5, San Diego State is their only bad loss by 3, and the game I mentioned, Texas Tech by 1 in OT. So otherwise, they won 26 out of 27 games in a very good conference. The Big 12 is the second best conference, and they kind of rolled through that tournament. Like these games aren't competitive. So I really like Houston for a lot of those reasons, but they are definitely one of those like upset-proof type of teams. Whereas in the past, like you look at like Coach Cal, Kentucky, upset every year. Coach Cal gets upset. Who else gets upset? Painter, Purdue. They obviously lost as a 1 seed a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
bounced back last year, but that's a coach who I don't like. There's just a lot of coaches that I try to avoid.
Rick Barnes, maybe.
Yeah, Barnes, Tennessee. I'm not a huge Barnes fan. I like Tennessee. Tennessee's very tough. I do like Tennessee. I think Tennessee has a lot of potential this year, but they're going to have to go up against Kentucky, which is a great game. They've played Kentucky a few times, and they're going to have to go up against Houston. which is like Houston's a better version of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like Tennessee in that matchup. And then injuries are huge throughout the tournament. Alabama, Grant Nelson, the guy who's been really good this year, he got banged up. We mentioned Flag. Iowa State's got a couple of guys who are banged up. So as you see the tournament progressing, who's back, who's playing are going to change a lot of people's opinions. Texas Tech is missing some guys who might be back. Houston, actually, talking about injuries, Juwan Roberts is hurt for Houston. He's very good, but I think their team is kind of dominated by overall toughness based on the coach, and their guard play is amazing. And if you remember last year, they would have beaten Duke if Jamal Shead didn't get hurt. Jamal Shead got hurt in the Sweet 16. Duke held on and beat them. So I think that's a team like some of the teams from years before. You see this every year where teams like lose and they come back strong the following year, which may be good for Auburn, who lost in the first round last year, kind of talking about, hey, we got to get tough right now. Virginia loses in the first round, they win the championship the next year. Purdue loses in the first round, they make the championship the next year. We saw this years ago with Villanova and Carolina. You have a tough loss, kind of bounce back. And I'd be careful, not to go too fast here, but I'd be careful with teams that just won their conference tournaments, a la Michigan, Florida, who are kind of riding high right now. I've seen a lot of times where those teams have gone through the gauntlet playing 4 or 5 days in a row, or actually those teams didn't play them so many days in a row. Let's say 3 days in a row. Now you're kind of riding high, and all of a sudden, boom, you get upset. Like Florida against UConn or Oklahoma. Florida lost to Georgia a couple of weeks ago. I remember that game because I bet Florida when they were behind, and they never made a run. So Florida, as good as they've been playing, and they're playing probably the best in the country, would it surprise me if they lost to Oklahoma or UConn? Absolutely not. So I think that would be a good game, but I don't see Houston losing to Gonzaga or Georgia or the team that comes out of Clemson, McNeese, Purdue, High Point. I think those could be 12, 13 upsets. So I have Houston like easily going into the Sweet 16. And that's one of the reasons why I have probably the most money on them, even at a poor number of plus 750. Everybody else is kind of just a flyer.
Mm-hmm. The boss says I'm filling out 25 brackets with all Houston winning.
Well, that's not wise.
Well, yeah, it depends what the entry fees are,
right,
for funds, whatever. Yeah, no, I picked Houston to win in my my picks. I think I have Houston, Michigan State at the end, and I like Michigan State as well. They didn't win the Big Ten tournament, but like you said, some of the teams that win those tournaments generally tend to disappoint unless they're like top tier already.
Right.
Like remember back in the day, Syracuse with McNamara. Remember they made this that crazy run in the Big East tournament, and then they got upset right away in the first round. I forget
happens. I feel like it happens every year, and then I really get excited about that one team. That look how great they were in whatever conference, and then all of a sudden they lose in the first round. Like what happened?
Mm-hmm.
But they were really good, and you just see kind of teams, and the opposite when teams lose early. Okay, let's gear up and get ready to play, get healthy and get ready to play, and those teams tend to make a little bit more of a run. But there's always upsets. I heard a few people talking about like, oh, this is the year where it's going to be all 1 seeds. I feel like I hear that every year. People say, oh, it's going to be all the 1 seeds. I think Jay Bilas says all the 1s versus 2s and all the 1s in the Final Four. People are like,
way to go out on a limb.
The lead ESPN analyst has all the 1s versus 2s. Like, thank you very much, Jay, for your insight. Appreciate it.
Right.
I think this year, because you have better teams that won their conference tournaments, right? Like I mentioned before, you had a lot of 1s versus 2s. You have more potential where there's a 13 seed or a 12 seed that's a better team than otherwise last year, those teams falling off, having a 4 or 5 seed in a low major conference win or mid-major conference win, and now it kind of pushes everybody down the list. So you end up with like a team that's a 13 seed who really should be like a 15, right? So like there are teams like that this year. Like I like McNeese, and I don't like Clemson. So I'm picking McNeese. What's the spread in that game? McNeese is 7.5. So first of all, they're for sure a live dog in the game. There's no question that they're not a live dog, right? It's also Will Wade is the coach of McNeese. He was the coach of LSU. Now they had one game where they lost at Alabama by 8 points. That's an impressive. To me, that's like their most impressive game of the season. They went up at Alabama and kind of remained competitive. And Clemson played in a weak ACC. They beat Duke. Good for them. But to me, that's like, all right, if I'm going to pick a couple of 12 seeds, then you have to pick some 12s and 13s or lower seeds. So that's the team that I'm going to pick as the 12 seed to advance. But again, that will just make life easier for a team like a Houston or even a Purdue. Like, you look at a High Point Purdue. I think that line's a little bit higher. Line might be like 9. Yeah, Purdue. No, sorry, that line dropped. That line was 9. Now it's 7.5 too. So Purdue, obviously, they have pedigree from last year. Braden Smith's back, one of the top point guards in the league. But High Point, they're an up-tempo team. They have a lot of double-digit scorers. They have a lot of guys who could score the ball. Is that a team that could win the game? Sure. They could absolutely upset Purdue. I wouldn't be running to bet the Purdue money line. I certainly wouldn't parlay, some of these Purdue Clemson money lines because that's a good way to lose money. But I definitely would look towards if I'm betting the games pregame, which again I'm not, but I would look towards taking the points with teams like that. There's also a bunch of 10 seeds, 10 or 11s. Like every year we have a playing team like a UNC, or I think Texas is going to win tomorrow night, even though they're dogs. And if Texas wins, they have what's his name? Trey. I'm drawing a blank now on his name. Who's the Texas? He's a potential lottery pick. He's like a top 5 pick in the draft. Potential. Just want to give you his name. Why am I drawing a blank?
Trey Johnson.
Trey Johnson, thank you. Yeah. Trey Johnson's a top 5 NBA pick. So if you look at a guy like that, that's the guard. Those are the types of guys you need to advance in this tournament. If I have a player like a Dwayne Wade, to throw out a name back in the day, if you're that good, if you're going to be that good of an NBA player, you should or could carry a college team. Curry, perfect example.
Right.
And this is why I became a Curry fan. I was all over Curry and Davidson 10 years.
I always bet Davidson too before everyone knew about it.
And it was just fun to bet Curry.
Yeah.
And then you have guys like Ben Simmons. You knew he was going to be a bust because he couldn't even take his team to the tournament, which is weird because Rutgers has 2 top 10 picks and they didn't make the tournament, which leads me to believe that the guys on Rutgers are going to be busts in the NBA. So I don't know who they are. Haven't really watched them play. So it's unfair for me to make that determination. But if you have 2 NBA lottery picks on your roster and you can't make the NCAA tournament, especially coming out of some of those weaker conferences, you're not a special NBA talent to me. I could put LeBron as a freshman or a rookie season LeBron on any college team, and they'd be in the Final Four. Right. Just like Carmelo won the championship that year and Wade carried his team to the Final Four. You put LeBron on any team, any 4 guys in college, and LeBron was going to be there. So I don't want to hear about some of these Rutgers guys or whatever. Ben Simmons, you can't make the NCAA tournament. You're probably not that good of an NBA player. You're probably not going to be that good of an NBA player. So I like Wade Taylor IV, this guy Trey Johnson from Texas. So I like looking for those types of players that I think could carry you in this tournament. So, and a lot of times you don't even know who those guys are until you watch them 1 or 2 times. Like, oh shit, I wish I knew who that guy was on New Mexico, or I wish I knew that guy was on McNeese. I probably would have picked them earlier. So watch for that as you watch some of these games. And I don't think the strongest ones you've seen this century. It's possible. I don't know that I would agree with that. If I don't know about Flagg's injury, I don't know how good Duke is without Flagg or with a hobbled Flagg. We'll have to wait and see. And I certainly think, as much as I like Auburn and Bruce Pearl, I don't like their guards. I think Auburn is ripe to be upset relatively early. But we'll see who they draw, right? I mean, if they end up drawing UC San Diego in the Sweet 16, they can be favored by 15 points in that game. But I definitely would not be laying minus 105 Auburn. I mean, I like Michigan State there, 5-1. That's not bad.
Yeah, I was looking at that too.
Because Iowa State's got injuries. And I think you can pencil in Michigan State for the Sweet 16 because Izzo always makes the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
And if Iowa State gets bounced, Michigan State's got a good draw to the Elite Eight. And if I'm getting 5-1, I can hedge that before that game starts. Yeah. So that's not a bad place to be. And Michigan State, if they don't draw Auburn, they'll be favored in that game in the Elite Eight.
Right.
So that might be a nice bet to make. And I usually don't recommend those futures because you can play it on the progressive parlay. But given that they're such big favorites in round 1, and theoretically they could be a large favorite in round 2 as well, and then who knows who they draw in Sweet 16, you might get better odds with that 5-1 now than waiting for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's a good line. You want to go through the other regions real quick?
Sure.
All right, so we have the West here, Florida minus 140, St. John's.
That's a bad bet on Florida minus 140.
Yeah. Who would you like then?
So I'm a Kansas fan, and Kansas was the number one team going into the season. They picked up a whole bunch of transfers. Zeke Mayo was excellent last year. AJ Storr was the best player on Wisconsin last year. He's been dud. Hunter Dickinson's been around for I feel like 8 years already. He played 4 years at Michigan. Now he's 2 years at Kansas. So he's been around forever. DeJuan Harris is very good. He was the point guard on the championship team a couple of years ago. But for some reason, even though they won all those games early in the season, they beat Michigan State, they beat Duke. Um, they haven't really put it together, and they've blown leads, they've blown games. Again, granted, very good competition in the Big 12. So that's a team. I look at them. First of all, I don't like Calipari in the tournament, so I like Kansas in round one. St. John's is the number one ranked defensive team by KenPom. They're really good defensively, and they're really well coached, but they also feed off their crowd. So if you look at their games not at home, that's an interesting game against Kansas. I, unbiased, think Kansas will beat them.
Okay.
I don't think Kansas will get by Texas Tech because they don't beat the top teams for whatever reason this year in the Big 12 if Texas Tech is healthy. But throwing a flyer on Kansas 20-1 is not bad. Like I wouldn't want to lay St. John's 5-1. And Texas Tech 6-1 is not enough for me.
Okay.
What are the teams beneath that? Like where's Memphis in that?
90-1 Memphis.
That might be worth a flyer. Although again, you can probably play the progressive parlay and get maybe better because they'll be big dogs against Florida. Mm-hmm. But they have real talent. Like that's a team 90-1. That's not bad. Same for Oklahoma, 100-1. Like Oklahoma also has good players. They have NBA potential players on that roster. Fears is a very good guard. So I mean, I'm not necessarily looking to bet these, but those look like really, really far out there. Like you could do worse than playing Oklahoma at 100-1 to win 4 games.
Mm-hmm. Okay. East region, we have Duke at -135.
So I like Bama here at 420, but again, that really comes down to Grant Nelson being healthy. If he's not healthy, that's going to be a problem. I do think Arizona, if Flag's not 100%, I like Arizona over Duke.
Okay.
I'm not a Wisconsin fan. I don't like what I've seen, again, from the Big Ten. BYU is an interesting case, although I don't think they're really like a team that gets hot. I don't think they can get hot for so many games in a row. And after BYU, I wouldn't look at anybody. I don't like any of those other teams. I mean, Oregon maybe to win a game, but otherwise, I have no interest in any of those other teams.
Okay.
Really, for me, it would come down to Alabama and Arizona for the value. I don't find any value laying Duke -125. I think you will find Duke down in some of these games, whether it be round 2 against Baylor or Mississippi State. They can certainly find themselves behind in that type of game. I'd rather bet Duke to win the game when they're behind. I'll get plus money at some point in one of those games, whether it's the Baylor Mississippi game or if it's the against Arizona or even against Bama. I'll get plus. I can almost guarantee you, I would bet you that I get plus money at some point in one game for Duke. So there's no way I'm laying -35 on Duke winning a region, especially if I don't know about Flag's injury.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough number with Flag out. If Flag were in, obviously the number would be higher.
If Flag were 100%, I still wouldn't lay -135.
Okay, interesting. Okay,
I would bet Duke when they're behind in the game and take a flyer. I would love. I think I told you this when they were the other night when Flag was in the game before he got hurt. I think I texted you, "Hey, note, Duke's down big early, down by 12 with like 10 minutes to go in the first half, and the line was so unfair. It was like -400 at the time."
Yeah, it's crazy.
Something like that. Like I'm not laying -400 or -250. They're going to come back and win, but I'm not laying it. And then he got hurt. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not betting this game at all.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, it was like a 12-point game or something. Georgia Tech was up, and I remember seeing like, what was it, 8-1 plus 800 or something?
Yeah, you texted me like, how about Georgia Tech like plus 720?
Like, yeah, they're like, 12, like 8-1 Let's go.
8-1. I'm like, I don't think so. Now, meanwhile, you could have taken that theoretically, and then you could have hedged it a few minutes later, but. Once you play that at that point, again, your bet is that they're going to be the ones to go on a run from that point forwards.
Right.
And I wouldn't bet that. Right. I would bet at any point that Duke's down, timeout. My bet would be at some point from this point forwards, Duke makes the run, not Georgia Tech.
Would you bet?
And that's where I think you'll get Duke plus money in one of these early games.
Obviously, well, yeah. Obviously, you wouldn't bet like Duke 1,200 or minus 1,400,
No,
whatever they were.
no,
But
that
would you
makes no
bet
sense.
right? But would you bet the spread at that point because you're going to get a
No, I
reduced
would
number of
never
the
bet the
spread?
spread.
Really? Okay.
Ever. No, I'm not laying points, and if I'm taking plus 3.5 or plus 6.5, I'd rather bet the money line.
Okay. Okay. All right. Midwest region, we have Houston at plus money.
So this is where like I said, I think Houston is cakewalking to the Elite Eight. I don't see them having a competitive game before they play Tennessee, and that's the only game that would be competitive.
Right.
I don't think anybody else in this region can give them a battle. I really believe that this could be the 12-13 matchup. I'm picking Purdue, but I'm taking McNeese over Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can throw those 4 teams into a hat and pick one of them out. None of those teams are competing with Houston. Gonzaga probably gives Houston the best matchup because they at least have a point guard, Nimhard, who's a potential NBA player who could handle pressure. But I don't think they have the defense to slow down Houston. Houston's got a really solid offensive team, and we know how good their defense is. Until you find me Houston, Tennessee, and Houston will be favored in that game. But again, there's no real value in playing plus 120. This is where you can go on FanDuel and you can actually like parlay teams to make the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
You could throw like Houston like to make the Elite Eight, right? I don't know if there's there you go. You can find teams. You could build yourself a little parlay here, almost like a same game parlay, like we talked about.
Right.
You can throw like Houston to make the Elite Eight at minus 320. I would go Elite Eight. I wouldn't go Sweet 16.
Okay.
They're going to the Elite Eight.
Okay.
This is the team I'm most confident in because they just don't have.
Minus
okay, so you're minus 152 to make the Elite. I would much rather play minus 152 to make the Elite Eight than plus 120 to go to the Final Four. But if you're parlaying this, you can throw this in with some other teams like Florida to make the Sweet 16. And again, we talked about this with same game parlays. If you throw 4 or 5 teams together, even if you're like minus 300-400, your odds will get up there in value. So you can go to Florida, you can go to Duke, you could throw in a couple of these. We talked about how good these 1 seeds are. Go take a bunch of 1 seeds to get to the Elite Eight or Sweet 16 and kind of roll the dice. You'll probably end up with like plus 300, plus 400 maybe, somewhere in that ballpark. Mm-hmm. Maybe throw Michigan State to make the Sweet 16. I'm not trying to make like a crazy parlay. That sounds very squarish, but the reality is if you're betting, if these teams are so expensively priced that it's not worth betting, parlay Houston, Florida, Duke, Michigan State, and Tennessee to make the Sweet 16 or throw in here the Elite Eight and see what your odds are. You'll end up with like a 3-1 or a 4-1 bet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They already have all these, so it won't work doing this, but
you can play around with that at some point.
I hate how FanDuel does this. Like you have to expand each one. It's like, come on. They do that for win totals as well in the NFL. It's like you have to open up each one to see it. It's like, come on, like DraftKings doesn't do that. On your one question I forgot to ask you on the total betting at the end of games. Does your sportsbook do they keep those totals up like throughout the 4 minutes at the end?
They generally come off the board probably around 2 minutes to go. It's a little bit past DraftKings, FanDuels of the world.
Yeah, they tend to show off at like 3 minutes.
So I've seen the offshores are probably up till about 2 minutes to go, and then you really just have money lines or spreads, depending on how the scoring is. Can we see Evan's bracket? Well, I have Houston winning it all. I don't really have my bracket fully filled out yet. Just kind of looking high level. I think I'm going to go Michigan State in the Final Four over Auburn. I am probably going to go Kansas over Florida. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. But certainly that's more the fan in me with Kansas. But I really do think Kansas has the talent. I mean, they just haven't put it together since like the first month of the season, which is kind of frustrating. And the St. John's game I know is going to be a very tough game. And of course they can lose in the first round. But I do like Kansas to go to the Final Four, Michigan State. I have Bama over Duke. I think Duke could lose to Arizona. I think that's especially if Flag is not 100%. Arizona is a really good team. And Caleb Love is a really good player, and he's got tournament experience. So I think Arizona is a really good team that certainly can give Duke a run for their money. So I'm going with Bama over Duke in the Elite Eight, and I'm going with Houston over Tennessee, and Houston, of course, winning the championship is my finals. As far as the other games are concerned, some of my lower seeded teams that I have winning, I have New Mexico over Marquette. I have Vandy over St. Mary's. I do not like St. Mary's. I think they stink. I think they're slow. Similarly, I do not like Drake, although they're an 11 seed. They also play in slow motion. I can't stand the teams that play in slow motion. I will probably pick UNC now that they won. And if Texas wins tomorrow, I will probably take Texas as an 11. I like Utah State over UCLA, again, playing against the brackets, against the conferences that I think are overrated. I don't have many other upsets. I told you I have McNeese over Purdue as a 12 over a 4 to get to the Sweet 16. I have BYU over Wisconsin. I don't like Wisconsin. I like BYU. I think they could shoot the ball well. I don't think they'll be able to keep up with Alabama. I'm very torn on this Yale-Texas A&M game. I mentioned this before. Yale won last year. They're certainly a good caliber upset pick, but I really like Wade Taylor IV. That guy is solid. So he's a guy that I'm running, and everybody has Colorado State. I have Memphis. I actually have Memphis losing to Florida, but I have Memphis really because I'm kind of hoping that Tyrese Hunter comes back and Haggerty is as good as I think he is. It's a total crapshoot. I think Creighton could beat Auburn. I would not be surprised if Creighton beat Auburn. I would be surprised if Louisville beat Auburn, although the game is basically a home game for Louisville. They're playing in Kentucky. They're playing in Rupp Arena, which is like an hour or half hour from Louisville campus. So Auburn gets the number 1 overall seed and potentially could be playing a road game in round 2. So you always want to pay attention where the crowds are. And Louisville will have a home crowd for sure in rounds 1 and 2 if they beat Creighton. But I don't like them to beat Creighton. I like Creighton. That's really it. Izzo, Michigan State, Florida, Kansas. Again, that's my fandom with Kansas. I could certainly see St. John's. I think Florida is going to lose. I think everybody loves Florida. That's like the hot, sexy pick now because they just boat raced through the SEC. And I watched them lose to Georgia, and I have a sore taste in my mouth from that game. I think Florida could lose to Memphis or Maryland or Oklahoma. It would not surprise me if Florida lost early. Also wouldn't surprise me if Florida ran through the tournament and won the championship. So I didn't have UConn in the last 2 years. So I was like, I didn't want to believe that they were just going to continue to race through everybody and cover every single spread. I think UConn is 12-0 ATS in their last 12 tournament games, which is sick.
It's crazy.
They couldn't make the lines high enough in these games. So yeah, that's my low level handicap. But I'm going to make money on this tournament by betting the runs. I'm going to make money on this tournament by betting team total over-unders based on the situation. And most definitely going to make money on this tournament betting late game overs when teams are fouling like it's going out of style, when you get 20 to 30 points in the last 4 minutes of a game. And I'm going to keep betting those because on those games, you can continue to go. And it wouldn't surprise me. There's a handful of times where that line just keeps going up, and up. And I feel like playing with equity that if I have 148, I'll bet 150, I'll bet 152, I'll bet 155, and I'll just keep going. So I think those are really the better ways to make money on the tournament. And the brackets are for fun. And I generally, that's weird. I don't really root for upsets because I root for better matchups. So I don't want to see the 15 seeds or the 14 seeds win. I'm not interested in watching Montana or Bryant or some of these other teams that are low seeds play, or Troy. Like, I don't want to see Troy beat Kentucky. I don't want to watch Illinois against Troy in round 2. I want to watch Illinois or Texas against Kentucky in round 2. So I'm in the minority. Like, I don't really root for these Cinderella stories. I find it annoying when you have 2 years ago when you have Florida Atlantic and San Diego State in the Final Four. It just makes for a real shitty Final Four. Yeah. I went to the Final Four in New Orleans 3 years ago, where I went to the finals, and that was Kansas against Carolina. I should have gone to the Final Four because I would have gotten North Carolina and Duke. That's what I want to see. I want to see the top teams playing later on versus the Cinderella story that are cute in round 1. But after that, it's like, wait a second. I have to watch Montana right now or UMBC again or the Peacocks, St. Peter's. Like, I don't want to watch St. Peter's. That was like I was rooting heavily against St. Peter's. I didn't like Purdue. So once they beat Purdue, cool. But after that, get out of my bracket. Like, I don't want to watch. I don't need to see a 15-point underdog in the Elite Eight.
I did have a blast watching Florida Gulf Coast that one year in 2013.
That was like a high flying team that was like
Yeah.
throwing a lot of alley oops and whatnot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was an exciting team. Yeah.
Sometimes you have these teams that are kind of funnish to watch.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I want better games.
Yeah. Yeah.
I live to watch these better games. Like, I want good quality, close, tough basketball games. And those are the games I watch throughout the season. Like, I'm not turning on the TV to watch, number 3 against an unranked team. Like, I want to, Tuesday night or Wednesday night, whatever, Big Monday or Saturday night. Like, I want to watch Auburn against Alabama. That's the game I want on my TV. I don't want to watch Auburn playing against Georgia, right? But I did see Florida playing Georgia, and Florida's down by double digits. I'm like, oh shit, Florida's down by double. Let me bet them, and they never made a run. So then I'm like, oh, Georgia, but Georgia stinks. Well, Georgia has 3 very big wins on their schedule. So can they make a run here? Can they give somebody a run for their money? Can they beat Gonzaga and maybe compete against Houston? I don't think they can compete against Houston, but that's the type of team. That's why I think Auburn and Florida, teams like that kind of rely on 3-point shooting. Auburn's guards are not great, and if Florida goes cold, next thing you know, it's UConn. They have pedigree. They're well coached. They don't play defense, UConn, but they can score, and we know they can coach. So maybe all of a sudden they get into a close game, and it's pick 'em spot. Game's tied with 5 minutes to go, and Florida can go down. So I don't root for upsets. I want better matchups, but I do believe teams like Florida, Duke, because they're not so healthy, and Auburn are ripe for upsets. So, yeah, they might be higher ranked 1 seeds, but if you like Jay Billis and you just pick every 1 seed against every 2 seed, you're probably not going to win the majority of your brackets.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It depends how large your pool is. If it's like 10, 12 people, whatever, you can go chalk. But if you're in a pool with like 50 plus, like generally not the best strategy to take the chalk. So asking, what about Houston plus 115 to advance further than Florida, and or Michigan State plus 130 to advance further than Tennessee? I'm not seeing it on FanDuel, so I'm kind of curious where you have that. What do you think about these lines?
Well, I mean, obviously I like Houston, but I don't know that I like these bets because they're not really playing each other, right? Like I would rather take Houston to make the Elite Eight, right? Which is what we said, minus 150, because then I don't care what Florida does. I just need Houston to win 3 games. I would much rather, and I'm not opposed to laying odds, don't get me wrong, especially with futures or props. We talked about this with the Super Bowl. I'm not afraid to lay minus 150 or minus 200. I think it's a good bet. I don't have to worry about Florida or Tennessee or Michigan State. I just have to bet that Houston's going to the Elite Eight, and I'm laying minus, what do you see there? Houston over Texas Tech. Yeah, I mean, it's because you think Texas Tech might go out early. I mean, you can win that bet basically betting against Texas Tech. I would rather just play. If I'm betting that, I'd rather just lay Houston minus 150 to make the Elite Eight, or parlay that with Tennessee or Florida or Duke to make the Sweet 16, and I'm going to get much better odds.
Okay. Kamiko says Kansas has been destroying it all year, but they'll get it together and beat St. John's if they get past Arkansas. Now that's a fan talking.
Rock chalk, maybe.
There we go. And the NFL question here for the lulls: is the running back position about to be drafted in the first round more often going forward? I don't think it's ever going to be like what we saw back in the day, where you saw like so many running backs in like the top 10. Was it like those one year in 2005? Was it like 3 running backs in the top 5 or something? Like, you're not going to see that again. But
well,
I do.
I'll say this: if you do, those are stupid GMs. Because the one thing we learned this year, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry on the teams that they're currently on were more valuable than Saquon and Derrick Henry on the teams they were previously on. Right. So you can't just be a GM and say, you know what? I like Ashton Genty. He's going to be like Saquon. He's going to be great. But then you're like the Giants, like, hey, let's draft Saquon Barkley, and we're getting nowhere with him. You put him behind the Eagles' offensive line in the Eagles system as a final piece to the puzzle, and now he's worth $20 million a year. You put him on the Giants, he's not worth anything because he's taking them to a 6-win record, right? You throw McCaffrey in his healthy year 2 years ago on the Niners, he had 20 touchdowns and dominated the red zone. You take him off that roster and put him on Carolina, and Carolina's a 5-win team. So it's not about GMs now, oh, you know what? The running back is back. Because if they do feel that way, they're making a big mistake. And
Yeah.
for that exact reason. It has to be about fit, it has to be about system and situation. So if they're a final piece to the puzzle, great. You put them on those kinds of rosters with Lamar and Hurts that kind of make you a dual threat backfield. Those are dangerous spots to be in. You throw them on the Giants. Same with the Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's worth a lot more to teams like the Niners, Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles than he would be, because he could be the difference in them winning the Super Bowl or getting to a Super Bowl versus going from 5 wins to 7 wins. So it really depends on situation. I would love to see GMs like Jerry Jones say, you know what? Running back now matters most. We're going to pay Dak $60 million. We're going to draft Genti, and we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And we both know what's going to happen. Dak will get hurt. Dallas will win 10 games or 9 games, and they'll lose in the first round of the playoffs if they make it.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's like a final piece / luxury piece. Like you can't build your team about a running back. Not used to be able to, but not anymore. The NFL's a passing league. But if you have a team that's complete or close to it, and you can make your team even better by adding the running back. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl in 2022, and they went to the playoffs in 2023 despite loss of injuries and bad coordinators. They saw an opportunity and they added Barkley. Same thing with the Ravens. Like, they were a playoff team. They added Derrick Henry. They were great. The Niners did that with McCaffrey. Like, they were a good team. They added McCaffrey, and then they went to the Super Bowl.
The running back has to be a final piece to the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the conversation before about Geno and Darnold and Myles Garrett, it has to start with quarterback and offensive line.
Yep.
Nothing else matters. If you don't have a quarterback and you don't protect your quarterback, you are not going anywhere. You have to start these teams that suck, these teams at the bottom of the rung, the bottom of the ladder. You have to start with quarterback and then protecting your quarterback. And then you can fill in like Washington's done, pieces around them.
Mm-hmm.
You need some defense? Great. We'll throw in some defense. Denver, same idea. Get the quarter. And I'm not the biggest Knicks fan, but let's be fair. At the end of the season, he was really good. He made some really big throws in that game against Buffalo. He didn't put up a lot of points in that game, but he was good down the stretch. He was a lot better than we thought. Now they start putting some pieces around him. They start adding some defense to the mix. And now they're a better team. Are they a Super Bowl contender? No, not at all. But they're not the team that they were when Russell Wilson was the quarterback and they were going down the chute. So it has to start with quarterback and offensive line, and you build from there. And the Eagles did it smart. The Eagles built it from both lines. Like, they're letting Slay walk. Now, obviously, they have DeGene, and they have other guys in secondary that are young that were drafted.
They signed Adoree Jackson to replace Slay.
Okay. The point is, though, they're building that team line,
right,
inside out. And that's the way to build in the NFL. You have to protect your quarterback. You really kind of need a mobile quarterback, because as we saw from Mahomes, if you can't protect your quarterback, you cannot win in this league long term. You're not a contender if you can't protect your quarterback, period. So you need a quarterback, and you need to protect your quarterback. And on the flip side, you need to be able to attack and get after the other quarterback. What was our number one goal in the Super Bowl this year? Both of us independently said number one goal for both teams is protection. How can these quarterbacks handle pressure? Who's going to pressure the quarterback more? And that's where the Eagles dominated the game.
Without blitzing.
Every single team watching that Super Bowl.
Yeah. Pressuring without blitzing.
So you want, and I have people talking to me like, oh, we got so-and-so as a corner, or we're signing this one in the secondary, or our secondary stinks. We need to add corner help. No, you need to add line help.
Mm-hmm.
You need to add pass rush, because nobody could defend in the secondary. If you have a quarterback with time who can run and throw, you can have Deion Sanders and throw out another Hall of Fame Rod Woodson. And you're not going to stop Josh Allen throwing the football to the bunch of bums that he's throwing the football to. If he has time, he's going to run or make those completions. Now, you also need a coach who's aggressive, right? You need to go for 4th downs and 2. But you need to protect your quarterback. And you need to be able to go after and get after the other quarterback without blitzing, without sacrificing on the back end. And that's how you build a football team. The Lions are doing it that way and have improved dramatically. The Eagles have done it that way. And every single time the Chiefs lose in the Super Bowl, they turn around and they shore up the offensive line again as well. Although, did they lose Tooney? I think I saw they lost.
They traded Tooney, which I thought was very bizarre.
That sounds like that really is a crazy trade, because he was their jack of all trades and the best player on that line.
Yeah, they traded him to Chicago for a 4th-round pick.
And that's what Chicago is doing. So Chicago is bolstering the line. They have the quarterback, or at least they think they have the quarterback. The guy didn't have any time last year. They changed the offensive philosophy with Ben Johnson, so that's right away a huge upgrade. They bring in offensive line help. Did they add anybody on the D line? I don't even know. If they did
Um,
it, they should, and they should in the draft. But that's the way to build a roster, not by drafting a running back because you think he's really good.
they got what's his face? Grady Jarrett from Atlanta, who's
Okay.
is past his prime, but he can still like contribute
But
a
at
little
least
bit.
they're addressing where needs and money should be spent.
Yeah,
I like to look
they
throughout the offseason where people are spending their money. Are you spending money on receivers, tight ends, and secondary, or are you spending money on the offensive and defensive line?
that's exactly what Chicago did. So Chicago signed 6 players this offseason. 5 of them were pass rush or blocking. So they got Joe Tooney, they got Drew Dahlman, the center from Atlanta. It was the best center on the market. And then they traded for Jonah Jackson from the Rams, who's he gets injured a lot, but when he's healthy, he's pretty good. So the 3 new interior linemen. Then they got Grady Jarrett, and they signed Deo Adenigbo from the Colts, who's a good pass rusher. So those are 5 and 6 signings. The other one was Alameda.
Those are major moves. That's a
Yeah,
major. That's a team that's going to have a huge upgrade when
yeah.
I really go through my power ratings and upgrades on the season. Because I was high on Caleb Williams coming out. He certainly wasn't good last year. He was very slow processing. He held the ball way too long. Maybe that's a product of the coaching. Maybe it's a product of the line or both. And we've seen coaches like McConnell with Darnold really in 1 year turn these mediocre quarterbacks into all pro caliber quarterbacks. And we'll see what Johnson's able to do with Caleb Williams now with a real offensive line. He already has weapons. We know that. So that's a team like, okay, is Chicago now a 10-plus win team? Maybe. And we'll take a look at the schedule, and the schedule comes out. We'll see how that kind of fits in with buys and who they're playing and where and when. Back-to-back road games and whatnot, and short weeks. And that's a team that's doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
That's a team that's building the correct way. Get the right coach. You have a quarterback. Now you got to protect them and see where it takes you.
Yeah. The only non-line player they signed is Olamide Zaccheaus to replace Keenan Allen. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they made some great moves. The problem is they play in the NFC North, which is so brutal. Lions,
Okay.
Vikings are 2 of the best teams in the NFL, and the Packers are up there too. So it's tough. But I think there's a chance all 4 teams make the playoffs. As crazy as it sounds, could happen. It depends on the schedule, as you said, but. We're approaching 2 hours now. It's 1 a.m., so I figure we should sign off. But always glad to have you on, Evan. Thanks for your insights into college basketball. Definitely going to apply them to the in-game betting. Hopefully, just search for the best lines. That's what I would recommend because
And that's exactly what you have to do because those margins are so small. You told me at one point you were like 1-5, and I'm on the flip side of that. And I told you a few times throughout the game, like, hey, I'm looking at an offshore book. And I'm looking at DraftKings, and the totals are 3 points off. 3 points different. That's huge. I mean, that's a major difference in overall betting. So 3 points, and you can pay 30, 40 cents to get 3 points. Now, I should never pay for odds moves, but if you're betting an over late in the game at 153, and I'm betting it at 150, you know how many times I've won and lost games by half a point? Just unbelievable how many games fall on the number in college basketball.
That 1 in 6 stretch, I must have lost like 3 of them by like half a point. This is so frustrating.
And I won all of those.
Yeah.
Literally every one, but sometimes by 1 or 2 points. So sometimes I was getting those bets a little bit earlier, but you have to get the best lines. Whether you're betting NFL, college basketball, live over-unders, live money lines, you want that number. And we see a huge difference in the money lines as well, on both sides of them. So if you have 1 or 2 books, just look at them just for fun. It's like, oh, this underdog is plus 400. Here it's plus 460. And if you see a consistency where dogs are better on one side versus another, then shade yourself towards the DraftKings or the offshore accounts. So you want to get the best of the number, of course, as always, but the strategy does not change. You don't have to know. I joke around about this in college football. I joked around with you last week about this. I don't know half the players on these games. Maybe for a bunch of teams, I know the full rosters. But if you think I'm watching McNeese, and I've watched McNeese once, I've watched one full McNeese game all season. I can't tell you the players on that team without looking it up. I don't know off the top of my head. There's a lot of teams that I'm going to be watching in the next couple of days that I really just don't know their teams. And we talk NFL, especially during the season, we know every single player on the roster. We know the coaching staff. We know the personnel changes.
Mhm.
We're betting those games with real knowledge and information. Here, we don't have information on the players. We're betting runs. We're betting runs. We're betting philosophy. We're betting odds. And we're taking advantage of odds movements because the computer does not watch the game. The computer is set pre-game and moves based on what the score is and how much time is left. They do not know who's hot or cold. They do not know who has foul trouble or not. And that's where you could take massive advantage. As it's like golf betting. I know nothing about golf. Nothing about golf betting. I don't know how to swing a golf club. Golf is not for me. When I retire from playing basketball and other sports and running and doing other things, maybe I'll take up golf, but I am nowhere near ready to take up golf, and I'm definitely not watching golf. I have 4 kids who play 1,000 different sports and events and dance and gymnastics and whatever. My youngest son plays 4 sports this spring. He's turning 7. He's in 4 different sports. I do not have any time to pay attention to golf on Sundays and definitely not during the week.
I'll tell you this: when you're watching golf and you're not betting it, it's just so boring. But if on Sunday when you have a golfer and you're betting him at like high odds, because that's all they are, it's like 20-1, 35-1. Like last year we won with someone at 65-1. Like every shot is so intense. You're so glued to the TV. It's so exciting. I would just recommend just doing it once and seeing like what it feels like. Like I guarantee your stance on golf is gonna be much different. I know you don't.
I would probably just be bored watching it and not willing to throw my money away on that. I probably wouldn't be home watching anyway.
Yeah, I know. I feel like once, in a slow weekend, I think just try it and see what it feels like. I think you'd be surprised because I never thought I'd be so into golf, but I really got into it. But we hit every matchup last week. We didn't get our winner, unfortunately. We had Morikawa at was it 18-1 or something like that. He had a great tournament except for round 3. It just bombed out like +5. If he didn't have that Saturday, he would have tied for first. But we went 5 for 5 in our matchups, which I was pretty proud of. So hopefully we do that again this week. I was going to post my matchups later on tonight. Before we head out, Cam Meekin asking, please explain why you have Alabama going further than Florida when they have no defense. Florida kicked their butts twice in 2 weeks.
Well, the easiest answer is that they're not playing each other right now, right? So for me, it's about matchups. So I look at Bama, and it really is predicated on Grant Nelson being healthy. If he's not healthy, he's been really good for them. First of all, I love Sears. Sears is good. I love Nate Oates. I love the way they play. I love their style. They're tough. They're not so tough, but they shoot a ton of threes. So if they're cold one game, they can lose to anybody. But I think I have them playing Vanderbilt in the second round. If they played St. Mary's, I don't think St. Mary's can score nearly as much as what Bama can score. On a bad day, Bama's going to outscore St. Mary's. So I love them even without Grant Nelson. I think they go to the Sweet 16. If they play BYU or Wisconsin, I think that's an easier matchup for them. BYU, to me, is a lesser version of Alabama, a team that's going to just look to bomb threes. So I think Bama is the better version there. The more experienced guard. I really like Sears. He's a guy that can carry a team, especially in this type of tournament. And like I said, Grant Nelson's big. So that's where you get tricky because that's where they're going to play a healthy Duke. If they play a healthy Duke team, they're going to be dogs in that game. There's no question about it. I'm picking them. You make your bracket now and you kind of ride with it. And I wouldn't bet that game before the game. I'd bet whoever's down at halftime, I'd bet. But if it's not a healthy Duke, if it's a Duke team that's maybe by then that's kind of a couple of weeks away, Flag should be healthy. But I think they can get upset by Arizona. I think Arizona is a very, very good team and also has that guard, Caleb Love, who could shoot the lights out and kind of carry a team by himself as he's done in the past. So if Bama gets that draw, I think the only tough game for them is really the Elite Eight. Florida, on the other hand, I think Oklahoma can be competitive. Oklahoma or UConn could be competitive in round 2. That's not an easy round 2 game. So I think Bama playing St. Mary's or Vanderbilt is a much easier game than playing Oklahoma or UConn. In round 3, in the Sweet 16, I think Maryland also has some good players. Maryland has some NBA potential players. Now, if they get lucky and they play like a Colorado State or a Grand Canyon, Florida's going to cakewalk through that game as well. But I think that's a tougher matchup against Memphis. And whoever they play in the Elite Eight, Texas Tech presumably would be healthy by then. Kansas, who I love, has all the talent in the world, although they just can't put it together. And St. John's is a very, very solid defensive team. They don't score the ball very well. And also they feed off kind of a crowd. So that game being out west would not really bode well as much for St. John's. And I don't know how many St. John's fans are going to travel out west, but who knows? But those are much, much tougher matchups. So it's not so much that I'm betting Alabama is going to go further. And so I think that Alabama has an easier matchup until the Elite Eight, and Florida has tougher teams that they're playing against. So to me, that's really what it comes down to is your matchup. Like, I don't love Auburn, but I don't think they're going to be playing it. I don't think they're going to play anybody who can really test them until they get to a Michigan State or a healthy Iowa State in the Elite Eight. So really it comes down to matchup, who you're playing. And a lot of teams get lucky because there's going to be upsets. You're going to get a 14 seed or a 13 seed that wins a game, and a top seed is going to end up playing against a crappy team as a 10-point favorite in the Sweet 16. So it really comes down to matchup and who you draw. And I just don't think highly of Vandy or St. Mary's, BYU, Wisconsin, Montana for sure. VCU I'm not a fan of. So I think Bama kind of has an easier road with a healthy Grant Nelson to the Elite Eight.
Okay. One more thing. I actually thought of you when I saw this or kind of discovered this several weeks ago. And it's kind of funny. This too brings up the golf betting. I've noticed that, like, especially in like round 4, usually I feel like the sportsbooks overreact to what happens, and I think it's algorithmic as well. Because if you have an instance where, like, let's just say like 2 golfers are like vying for first place, and like one is like minus 125 and the other is like plus 150 or whatever, whatever. I just made up numbers, but like, okay. Let's just say, like, for example, the guy who's plus 150 hits the ball into the rough off the tee. His number will go to like plus 225 or plus 250 like instantly. And I'm like, and if like you're not watching, it's kind of tough to see. But like if I'm watching, I'm like, this doesn't seem like too difficult. And usually they just get out of it. Usually, like, sometimes it's tough. Like, you know, if they get the ball into the water, obviously it's a stroke penalty. Or if, like, there's one instance, it's a few weeks ago. I felt really bad for this guy, Jake Knapp. He was in first place. He hit the ball like not in the water. It was like on the hill, like right next to the water. He had to actually put 1 foot into the water to hit the ball out. And like he hit the ball, and like there was this huge splash of water, and the ball went like 2 inches. And like it was basically another penalty. It's so brutal. He went for like first to fourth on that one hole. It's just brutal. So I'm not talking about like those instances, but like a golfer just hit into the rough where it's like not the grass is not that high, and the odds will move so dramatically. I'm like, okay, and
you can take advantage of getting the plus money.
Yeah. I'm like, this.
Well, I'll give you better because I have watched some golf, really just Masters, and really just when Tiger Woods was playing. But if you see like a guy, drawing a blank, let's say like a Jordan Spieth, I'm pretty sure he's had some crazy Sunday runs, right? Mm. And I only know this because I have family who pay attention and watch, and they've asked me these questions on the betting odds. If you see a guy having a great day and kind of making a comeback in a way where he's going to shoot like a -6 or a -8 for the day, and you can kind of get a sense early on, and he's playing earlier because he's behind.
Right.
You get a sense earlier. This guy he's on today, right? You can watch a team that's on, a player who's hot or a golfer who's hot, and say, you know what? I'm going to take his odds now like 10 to 1. Yeah, he's down by like 4 or 5 strokes, but I'm going to play 10 to 1. Why? First of all, maybe there's a shot he wins, or more importantly, maybe there's a chance I can get the guy who's ahead of him at a better price and hedge it. Mm-hmm. Now, again, it's hard to do because there's multiple players. It's not like a 1 versus 2, right? A team, right. You're in a binary situation. With golf, there could be 10 people. So I don't know if it works as well, but I guess that's the premise you're looking for. It's like, hey, this guy made a bad shot. There's still plenty of time to recover. The odds really should be plus 150, but now I'm getting 3 to 1 because of one bad maneuver or one bad instance. And yeah, I hear you, but again, I don't really follow it, so I can't really tell you where the odds go. I can tell you that with 7 minutes to go or 5 minutes to go in a basketball game, that's a pick'em spread pre-game, and one team's down by 12, and you're getting 7 to 1 or 10 to 1. I'm taking that all day long. That's a flyer. Why not? And I'll put $50 on it to win $350 or $400, or $100 to win, let's say, $800, and just say, hey, let's make a run. And they don't make a run, they don't make a run. You know what? You know what happens if they don't make a run? Let's say they're still down by 7 or 8 points. You know what I'm doing? I'm betting the over. So I don't care about my bet at my $100 bet to win 800 because I'm going to win, the same amount or a couple more than $100 on the overs because they haven't made a run. They're only down by 10 or 12 points. They're still down by 10 or 12 points. There's no hedge opportunity, but I'm betting the over. No question about it. This team's not giving up. It's the NCAA tournament. They're not quitting. They're down by 12. They're going to foul. Now, later in the tournament, a team like, I don't know, throw out like a Florida or an Auburn that's kind of so deflated that they know they're not going to win, and they just kind of throw in the towel. But you see that with them not fouling.
Right.
It's the teams that are fouling, that are pressing and fouling with like 2.5 minutes to go, that hey, this team is ready to fight till the end. And I coach too. I mean, I don't coach Division I college basketball, but I always tell my players when we're losing, hey, we're going to fight. We're down. We're going to fight until the end. Maybe 2 minutes to go, I'll put it in my bench. But hey, I don't want to see anybody quitting until the buzzer sounds. Right. So there's a lot of coaches out there who feel the same way, and a lot of players who, like I said before, these young guys, they're never going to be on TV again. The kids from Montana, if they're down by 15 against Wisconsin, you don't think they're fouling at the end of the game?
Right.
They're fouling. They're fouling, and they're going to try to score as many points as they possibly can. I mean, I don't know what the line's going to be. You can know pregame what the line's going to be. You'll see this first half versus second half. You divide it by the minutes, add maybe a quarter point per minute in the last 4 minutes. So if you got a line of 75, the line's going to be like 16 and a half, 17 and a half in the last 4 minutes. Bet it. 10-point game, bet the over. Don't think. Just bet it. Timeout, last TV timeout. Oh, they're down by 10? Perfect. Over. Don't think, just bet it. Blind.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be applying this, so can't wait for the games to start on Thursday. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. We'll be back tomorrow with Kenny. We're going to be reviewing some more NFL signings. I'm sure we'll have some stuff happen tomorrow. Hopefully, Aaron Rodgers signs at some point, so we'll have some major stuff to talk about. I thought we'd focus on like the fantasy aspects of some of these moves. So we'll get into that, and then Thursday we'll have a show. Saturday with Tom. So looking forward to all that. And Evan, great to have you on once again. There you go. Yeah, Kansas. It's Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Let's go. I don't have my Penn State Nittany lines are not in this. Not that I'd care. I don't really care. But yeah, guys, have fun watching the tournament. If you guys don't check in tomorrow. But yeah, like I said, I love doing the show with you, Evan, as always, and I can't wait for the NFL season. So
thanks for having me back. It's been
it's
been a couple of months of a break, so it's nice to be back for Walter Football Universe, Walter Basketball Universe. So,
absolutely,
keep up the football work, because in about a couple of weeks I need to read all your articles, get those teams in order, because I need to do a crash course in who's on what team a couple of days before the draft.
Yeah, everything will be up on the site as usual. All right, guys. Once again, thanks so much, and have a great night, everyone. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.